Good evening. City of New Haven, meeting agenda, Finance Committee, Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, 6 p.m. in the automatic chambers. Meeting can be viewed on Board of Alders YouTube page, automatic notice, New Haven. The Finance Committee will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, at 6 p.m. in the automatic chambers, 165 Church Street, New Haven, to act upon the following. 1, to hear public testimony concerning the mayor's annual budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023. 2, OR-2023-0005. Ordinance amendment to appropriating ordinance number 1, authorizing budget transfer number 201-23-1, transferring funds from the police services salary accounts to overtime, travel, training, equipment, repairs and maintenance, uniform, printing, and contractual services, accounts in the amount of $4,600,000. $600,000.00. 3, a workshop to review portions of the annual city budgets proposed for the fiscal year commencing on July 1st, 2023. Following city departments will be heard: police services, fire services, community resilience. These items are filed with the city clerk and may be inspected at room 202, 200 Orange Street, New Haven. Per order, Honorable Adam Marshawn, Chair, attest Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need a disability-related accommodation, please call 3 business days in advance, 946-7651, voice, or 946-8582, TTY. Public may send comments to public testimony at newhavenct.gov. We want to thank you for joining us on tonight. We ask that you would wear your mask in our automatic chambers. COVID is still alive and well. So we ask that you would please mask up in our chambers, please. Beginning with introductions from our committee, we'll start with my right with Alder.
Ernie Santiago, Ward 15.
Frank Douglas, Ward 2.
Yvette Hamilton, Ward 24.
Campton Singh, Ward 5.
Anna Festa, Ward 10.
We would like to thank our colleagues for joining us, Alder Salvatore Punzo and Alder Gerald Antunes. And I am Ron Hurt, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. We'll begin with our public testimony.
Do you want me to get the list?
Yes, please.
No, I've got it. Oh, you told me to get it. I was gonna say, nobody said it.
Sign up.
I got you covered.
Thank you.
Movies, you know. Starting on the list with our public testimony, the first name on our list is Ellen Christopal, then Stephanie Fitzgerald, then Joshua Glaas. Is that Glass? Forgive me if I mess it up. We would like folks giving public testimony to be aware of, just to give everyone an opportunity to speak, we're asking you to limit your testimony to 3 minutes, please, so that we can give everyone an opportunity. So we'll start with Ella. if, wanna come forward, come on up. Name and address for the record when you sit down, and go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Ella Christoph. I live at 95 Olive Street. Thank you for having me and thank you for your service. I'm here to, thank you. I came tonight to advocate for cyclist and pedestrian safety in New Haven. I myself bike ride to work at Yale New Haven Hospital and SRC on a daily basis down Chapel Street. And I really love bike riding, and being able to do that in New Haven is one of the reasons why I wanted to work here. It reduces traffic congestion and makes me feel like part of my community to see it with, you know, the wind freezing in my face on a daily basis. But bike riding in New Haven is not for the faint of heart, and as I'm sure you're all aware, many pedestrians and cyclists have died in New Haven. I think that improving infrastructure to support cyclists and pedestrians in New Haven is to the benefit for all people. For those who drive, it reduces congestion. And then for those of us who do bike ride and walk around, it connects us with each other, it reduces pollution, and the more of us who are on the road as on our feet and on two wheels, the safer the streets are for everyone. So I hope you are able to take it into consideration with all your other important work that you're doing with the budget of New Haven to make it an attractive place to live for people who don't drive.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Stephanie Fitzgerald, come on up.
Well, Ms. Fitzgerald is going to remind everyone to please mask up in the chambers. If you don't have a mask, we do have masks.
Thank you, alders. Thank you, fine board, alders, Alder Frollo. Anyway, I think you've probably heard this before, but I do support.
Name and address
I'm
for the record,
sorry.
please.
Stephanie Fitzgerald, 433 Edgewood Avenue, New Haven. And I'd like to support the mayor's recommendation, or even more, for both parks, all the parks positions, both the maintenance workers and the park rangers. I think we have an incredible wealth of parks in New Haven, and we just don't have the personnel to take care of them. I'm currently working with a group of about 70 people who represent volunteers in 33 different parks. And the kind of work that they do in the parks is just astounding. What do you call it when you pat yourself on the shoulder? Anyway, in Edgewood Park, we are incredibly fortunate. We have a group of volunteers. We have 10 to 14 volunteers who work in the park all year round, every single week. And we have planted 100 trees in the last 10 years. We water them, we take care of them, we take care of 7 gardens, we help maintain the trails. The Parks Department has not had, it's not that they don't want to do it, they can't trim the trees, they can't trim the shrubs, so we need this. So that's my point, and then I want to just add one more thing, which has nothing to do with parks. I'm just so glad that the mayor amended his budget to include a full-time children's librarian in the Hill. I think that's really, really important. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next person on our list, Joshua. Wow. I butchered your last name.
I don't worry about it.
I apologize.
No, I could have
Help me out here.
The B could have been much better. It's GLAAB.
Oh,
As in boy, yeah. Yeah, and it's lab, the 2 A's through everybody, it's totally fine. No stress at all, thank you. I live at 221 Foster Street, so I'm in your ward. Thank you for the work, you know. I am here to testify in support of the position of active transportation planner. I am actually the president of New Haven Bicycling Club. I am also an avid runner and part of New Haven Road Runners, and I'm also part of the Safe Streets Coalition here in New Haven. I think we've all maybe noticed that our streets have, over the last few years, gotten not safer. And many of us who are part of trying to make it a safer place realize that a lot of that comes down to infrastructure and how we build things. And currently, what I've seen, I've been working on trying to make this a safer place for the last 5 years. And what's evident is things don't get done. I mean, I think we've all, anybody who's been on the calls about Whitney Avenue that started 2.5 years ago, and we still haven't done anything. And I know, and I don't think it's a matter of blame. I think it's a matter of we just don't have the leadership and the resources necessary to make things happen when they need to happen. There's a lot of moving parts, and having a person who can be in charge of that is just vital to us. And not only is it about safe transportation, it's about safe living here. I think of personally the other night, I heard guys street racing in East Rock. I think you probably did as well. We thought actually it was gunshots. If we had speed bumps down North Street, you wouldn't be racing down North Street. It's really simple. It'd also be a safer place. I ride my bike every day to school. Honestly, most of my students go, "You ride your bike to school?" And the reason they do that is because honestly, Orange Street's not safe. They know it. And the truth is, if we could just slow cars down, it'd be an easy place to be riding a bike. And it'd be the best place. I mean, New Haven, I'm here because I love living here. And it could be a place that it's the best. And that safe transportation is what would happen, what's needed. My dream is that every kid can ride to every part of New Haven. So that's all I got for you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Very much, sir.
Is there anyone from the public that's here that's wish to testify? Is there anyone from the public here that wish to testify? One more time, is there anyone from the public that is here that wish to testify? Hearing none, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is number 2. Good to see our colleague, Alder Rodriguez from the 4th Ward. For those who are presenting, please come forward.
This item is about the budget transfer.
Yes, for me, yes, for us. Sorry. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. While we get started, name and addresses for the record, please.
All right, Michael Gormany, City Acting Controller, 45 Jefferson Road, Brantford, Connecticut.
Regina Ruskittle, CAO, 2 Front Street, New Haven.
That's all.
Carl Jacobson, Chief of Police, 15 West Valley Road, New Haven, Connecticut.
Melissa Hudson, Supervisor of Management Services, 476 Barberry Road, East Haven, Connecticut.
All right, so what we're passing around are basically the sets for tonight, but one of the packet items should be labeled budget transfer request. And that's what we'll be discussing. And everything was one packet of a set.
Right, great.
One.
Yeah, they were turned opposite ways for
Right.
a packet. Yep.
But they're the same thing.
No.
Okay, got it. Never mind.
All right, so we are here before the Finance Committee to talk about the police budget transfer for fiscal year 2022, 2023. As we committed a few years ago, as we look at overtime and how it's relating to the department going on in the fiscal year, we would come before the board to talk about where we are and to take a look at the overtime numbers within the department as they were exceeding budget or below budget or whatever the case is. The transfer that you have before you is primarily for overtime, but there are a few other areas that the chief will get into where we are transferring funds from, for example, training and a few other categories within the police department. The funds are made available from lapsed salary within the department, which the chief will get into related to overtime. But so this is not a transfer taken from any other department or any other area within the budget. This is strictly due to us having lapsed salary from unfilled vacancies. So with that, I will turn it over to the chief.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yeah. So,
Excuse me, Chief, before you start, we'd like to recognize all the Walker Myers that have joined us. You may proceed, sir. Thank you.
so if you look at the first packet of the budget transfer request and open to the cover, the top page, we're requesting a transfer of $4.6 million within the police department's budget. But I would say, as in the past, we're not going to take any other money from any other budgets. We're strictly staying within our budget. These are budgeted salary positions that were not filled over the year, the year budget period. Of course, we're trying to fill as many budgeted salary positions as possible, and that's our goal next year as well. But this year we didn't account for that. The first line item is travel. We're requesting to move 10,000 into travel. With the certain, the different issues we've had over the year from 2023, 2024, I made a commitment to training. The travel money, most of it goes to sending officers out of state to engage in more training. We usually don't spend a lot in travel, but we feel that from now to the end of the year, there will be some costs associated with that. And then, of course, the next line is training. This training money is for outside related courses and mostly specialty courses. But we do send, like, I just signed a form to send a new lieutenant to a command staff training. We would normally train the command staff as a whole, but sometimes you make command staff personnel one or two at a time. And in that case, I wanted to send her to a training that would be sufficient for her. There's a lot of other trainings involved related to, I think the motorcycle units going to be all trained in seatbelt, child seat implementation, so that we can do community events and have all of them implementing the child seats into cars as part of the community event, along with whatever other community event things we do. Detention, there's 5,000. We're doing a lot of different things in detention to fix it, fixing the doors, put more cameras up. We're making handicap cells. We're looking to make suicide cells. So if somebody claims a suicidal episode, we're just making detention safer, as safe as we can make it. There are some talk and there's some things in the legislature about possibly the marshals taking over detention, but it is still our building. So we'll still be required to make changes and make that area safe. So I would say we're not spending money that we could kick off to the marshals because it's still our building. We need to make those things safe. So 80,000 in supply equipment. Some of the items that we're looking at for there cover equipment purchases to increase officer and public safety and efficiency, department's annual ammunition order and scenario-based training equipment in 2023 was way over. So ammunition is way more than it used to be. Simunitions, which are the fake bullets, but they give the officer like the real feel when they're being shot. shot at with fake bullets. So those have all gone up in cost, like everything that we see. So that line item's to 80,000, supply uniform 40,000. The union, we're in that case, we're adhering to the union contracts and the requirements for officers with under 3 years of service. They're provided full uniform every year, while veterans are provided full uniforms every other year. 79 of the department's 331 officers have under 3 years. So they all get more because they're new to the department. The other thing we're doing with some of that money is we're looking to, we get a lot of officers with back injuries because they have too many things on the belt. We're having an attachment kind of outer vest that goes on, and they can put some of their like radio handcuffs up here to avoid the pressure on their belt. It's something we probably should have done a long time ago, but being I'm just rolling it out, it's not part of the officer's original order that they made. It's something additional, you know, what we've been going through and ordering people to stay and the things that have happened in the city. I'm looking for ways to kind of keep our officers healthy, excuse me. The back's a big issue. I personally have a back injury from this job. So we decided to put some money together and get those vests so they could put their gear off their belt. And I guarantee over time this will pay for itself because they will have less back injuries, be out less. And you know, it's something that we can give them that puts a smile on their face. Printing and binding. We now have a new printing person who came over in probably directly after COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had our old guy Bob pass away, and this guy has started. He's doing a good job, but he's doing a lot more printing than we had anticipated. So we wanted to put 30,000. There was some equipment that was non-functional that we had to upgrade for him. And then I've said it many times, I'm having him print business cards, excuse me, for every officer. So that's a cost that was actually a little higher. That we actually told him, let's put it on a little less expensive card, please. But we're working those things out, right? You know, you start something new and you gotta work those things out. Central services, repairs and maintenance. Funds will be used as needed for various repairs and maintenance needed for the remainder of the fiscal year. We are working on an outside door to detention that may cost a little more money than we have in the detention. We want people to come to the police department where it's the door over to the right where you go pay bonds and whatnot. We want to have a buzzer system so people can buzz in and be attended to. So if they're intaking a prisoner, they can't answer somebody knocking before you just go and knock on the glass and you can't see in there. And honestly, it's not user friendly for the community. So we're going to lock that door, put a buzzer on it with an intercom. They hit the intercom, the sergeant will then answer them. Yes, we're just intaking someone, give us 2 minutes, or we're coming right out. And I think it's a friendlier, more customer service way. You're already upset because you're bailing out a loved one or checking on a loved one. So I think we need to clean that up, and that's what some of this money will go towards. Central services and other service contracts. This is a line item that we'll use when we just hired 6 recruits last night that will be going to the Hartford Police Academy. And we hope to get up to 11 more. So like the Hartford Police Academy charges us to send them, not very much, but it's a small fee, but it's something that needs to be covered. And then, you know, if we ever get an opportunity to take Hartford, excuse me, candidates, they'll of course have to pay, or we work something out in the long run. But we've never sent people to Hartford, and Hartford's never sent people here. So other departments, we do have those agreements where Waterbury, we didn't have to pay for our cadets to go there, and we're currently training Waterbury cadets. So I want to get those relationships built up, but with Hartford right now, since it's the first time, we had to pay. And then, of course, overtime, $4.3 million to overtime. And then if you, the next page on the summary is basically what I explained to you, but you can read it. And then the next page is 2019 fiscal year to 2023 overtime fiscal year. And I would think one of the, obviously it's a big number there, where gross OT projected 15,100,000. But you'll see last year we were pretty high, but we had a reduction because we had ARPA reimbursement, and then we had more federal task force reimbursements. Unfortunately, I'm at a limit in the police department where I've had to cut my federal task forces and put more of those guys and girls back on the street. So when we get more officers, we'll be pushing more officers back out to the federal agencies that, you know, as you saw, there was a decent roundup recently. They're very effective, and we'll get way more reimbursements in the future as we move forward. The net OT is 14,500,000, and then it just shows you the average of filled positions for the year. And then I think what's important too is the officer overtime rate. That has increased, but it hasn't increased over the last two years. The next slide is going to describe more budget transfer requests for the overtime. So back in fiscal year 2019, we were budgeted you can see the budgeted amount of overtime, but that was based on having 392 sworn officers with 23 recruits. You come all the way to our year 2023. I got confused by the columns because I thought the people were going up. They're actually not. They go down. But it shows the money going up, which is important to keep our eye on, right? The money going up. So we have 331 sworn with 19 recruits, which brings our total number down to 312. So we actually have 312 officers working with 19 recruits. If you go to the next page, I think this is really a better explanation. It breaks it down into the amount of money spent on each division, so to speak, per year. So, of course, staff shortages on patrol every year has been one of our largest spending things. But if you look at also our staff shortage investigative unit, it's up this year. But I would say too that our solves and our arrests are way up this year for violent crime such as shootings and homicides. And then also we had a press conference today announced 4 more arrests for people being shot at. Attempted assault first. In the past, we didn't get a lot of arrests for that. This year, I believe we have 25 arrests for that, just in 2023. That takes a lot of investigative time, but it also takes someone off the street that intended on shooting somebody but missed them. So I think we're looking at the whole picture and we're getting things we didn't get before, and we're arresting people we didn't arrest before, which is extremely important. That unit as well, which is a shooting task force, it also has members from other communities in there. There's a Yale officer, a Wallingford officer, a North Haven officer, and they've even made arrests for shooting incidents in their towns, but also in our town as well. So I think we're getting the most for our money out of it, but it has been an increase in the budget this year. If you see the black line, to 2023, where in 2019, we spent a lot less money on the investigative unit side. And then also, again, crime incident and response. Although we did have a lower year, one's too many, but lower, meaning 14 homicides in the fiscal year between December and January. In the calendar year, between December and January, we did have 10 homicides. 9. So if you see that black line is way up there because we sat on more crime scenes than we were kind of expecting to. But again, the investigative spending has led us to, therefore, arrest more people. And then again, I pointed out the reimbursable. If you see our reimbursable this year is almost next to nothing for task forces. We also had a 3-year grant for Gun Crime Intel Center that helped pay for some overtime but that's dwindling down, and we've used a lot of that money for technology, like the NIBIN machine, the DNA machine, which we've talked about here a lot. So just kind of offsetting some expenses when it comes to overtime drivers. Did you want me to stop for questions or just keep going and then stop?
Keep going.
Okay. Budgeted sworn strength as of March 31st. So we're budgeted for 410 officers. We have 79 vacancies and we have 331 filled. So we're 81% capacity. Obviously, this leads to overtime expense. That's why we put it up here. The 47 officers, we're down to a point where we have to fill just regular positions, and we've made some changes where, like I talked about coming out here as chief, I wanted to really try to make the city safe and get that community policing back. So we spent a lot of money in walking beats, and I'm determined to still spend a lot of money in walking beats. But I'm going to cut where I can, and I'm going to, in the future, as we build the numbers in the police department, I'm going to put things in place that are going to help us save money. One of my ideas when I came here to you in July of last year was that I'm going to empower my division heads. Right now, we look at the overtime as a holistic piece, right? We all look at it from the chief's perspective down. When I get enough people to where I can have mid-level and higher level managers control that overtime, that's what we're going to do. So District 7, New Hallville, will get a budget, and he'll stick to his budget. And if he goes over his overtime budget, he will then have to report to the chiefs and the captains, and we'll make a decision whether we move some of the money, internally. So there's going to be more accountability within our department for the overtime, which quite frankly, I never knew as a lieutenant who ran a plainclothes division, 30 people. Back when I did that, I didn't know how much money I spent. I just kept spending money because I was told, go stop the shootings, right? But I want my command staff to have in the back of their mind, okay, we need 5 walking beats tonight. But what does that cost me? What does that mean to the people and the citizens of New Haven? So in the future, when I get to the number where I'm able to staff at least the basics that we need throughout the day without having to pay for, that car that's, there's only 2 cars during the day in District 5, all the districts. So right now, sometimes we have to pay for that car, so that's how short we are. But we're about 30, 40 officers from, we don't pay for that car anymore. It's a set beat, it's a set post. Now I say to my division commanders, this is how much money you have to spend. And if you go over that amount of money, I'm going to hold you responsible, and you're going to have to tell me why. So everybody has a thought of, okay, it's real easy to say I need 10 walking beats to stop my violence, but it's harder when you're saying, how much is this going to cost the taxpayers in New Haven? So I want to start that top-down view of it as soon as, I wanted to start it when I came on, but I realized how much we were dealing with in shortages. So I said, I can't do this yet. And I wanted to make some changes where there's some new district managers and they're doing good. They're doing excellent, actually. And as they get settled into what they're supposed to be doing on the community side, then I'm going to add that money side to them and make them have them help me keep the overtime within a certain budget. And then you're going to see, if this is operating properly, you're going to see District 6 might not have as much violence and say, hey, District 7, you can take my walking beat because I know you need help. And I know the officers and the supervisors do think like that, but we don't hold them accountable for the money yet. And that, as a chief, that's something I'm going to do. So I'm not the only one looking at the money. We're all looking at the money, and we're looking at costs versus risk versus reward and what it's costing the city taxpayers. We'll go to the next page. Oh, sworn budgeted strength and projected. We did a 31-year average. The average of budgeted strength is 466. We're currently at 410. And the average over the 31 years of officers is 410. We're currently at 334. So that's just showing the difference of going up and down. I know that we're at a very high number of overtime. We also, a couple of years ago, signed a contract giving officers more money, and we potentially could be signing another contract. That's why it's important to put this all in perspective for you all, so you can see where we were and where we went and where we're gonna go. And I think it's real important that when we get to a certain number of officers where we're able to say, all the positions are filled on this entire day, I don't have to hire anybody. Then what are we hiring for? Is it effective? What's the risk versus reward? And how do we move on, not only to keep the city safe, but to keep the budget down? But another thing, there'll be a certain overtime budget for drag racing. There'll be a certain overtime budget for ATVs. Like, this is how I'm thinking, not only how do we stop the ATVs and drag races, because we're gonna do that. We're gonna stop the ATVs and drag races. That's gonna happen. There's technology that I got. I showed you guys my plan last week. I think most of you saw it. We have the technology. We're starting to get the bodies, and we're gonna stop it. But then we have to look at how much money we're gonna spend and how we do it effectively. This real-time intel center that we're building will help us collect data to say, hey, you know, the ATVs are really only out there Sunday, Tuesday, Friday. Now I'm not hiring every night to try to stop them. Now I'm only hiring proportionately to how the intel center is giving me that feedback. So there's a lot of things technology-wise that we can do, and there's a lot of things accountability-wise. But I want to make the accountability from a sergeant to a lieutenant up, instead of just saying, let's look at the whole picture of the police department. And I think, you know what that makes? That makes better supervisors. That makes better district managers, definitely makes better district managers and better unit supervisors. Because they're gonna say, okay, boss, I'm not gonna go out Monday because it's raining. I'm gonna save that money till Thursday. And sometimes they don't think like that. It takes an assistant chief to go, hey, why are you heading out on an ATV detail? It's raining, right? That's a stupid, simple detail, but that's what I'm talking about. And when you get your people on board and they know, hey, listen, the chief's gonna hit hot water if the overtime budget goes up, they're gonna work as hard as I am if they're on board with me. And I think we're getting to that place.
Thank you.
Any questions? Because I don't want to talk long, Mike.
Before we go any further, I want to recognize my colleague, Alder Jeanette Morrison. Thank you. And any questions from the committee? Alder Douglas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for presenting. Yeah, Chief, I kind of sympathize you with your back injury. I've always wondered, is all of that equipment that you all carry on your belt, is it all really necessary? Maybe budgetary wise. I know you're talking about adding another piece of equipment. Is there any way you can eliminate some of the stuff that may not be needed today?
Yeah, we're
line of
actually,
duty.
that's a great question, and we're actually doing that. So our policy reads that you have a baton. I don't see officers carrying a baton. I'm gonna take that off the policy so that they don't, it's an option to have, and they're trained in it if that's what they want to use. And it may be in the back of your car because you need it to pry open the door or something. But if you don't want to wear it on your belt, you don't have to. The other things are like ammunition. We have the two backup magazines of ammunition. That goes on your belt. It's it interferes with your vest. It's very uncomfortable. We're going to allow them to move it up to their front, and then they have to go through a certain amount of training, so they are learning how to reload from this area instead of this area. So that's a great question. So we are eliminating some things, but like we recently had tourniquets put on, and I would say to you, at first I was like, why, you know, tourniquets, why? But I've seen, boy, in the last 3 or 4 years, probably 100 people's lives saved because of them. So I'm going to say we keep the tourniquets, right? And then you got flashlight, you have handcuffs. So yeah, there's not a lot you can eliminate, because you also want them to have a gun and a taser, so they have something to go to and not just go to the gun, right? So, but something like the baton we did eliminate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Frollo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to get back to what we were talking about. I think this is working. Cut us a little closer. Thank you. The appropriate ordinance to do this transfer of 4.6 million. So we have some of the highest that we've had in 2016 was, well, first of all, let me thank you, Chief, for the incredible job that you're doing. When I call 911, no offense, but I don't want a counselor. I want the police to come. And I want them to come quick and ready to support me in whatever I need. And so I thank you for the work that you're doing and for equipping our officers to do their job. And as we're discussing overtime budget, I recognize how important it is to make sure that our officers are paid and that they have all the support that they need to make sure that they're out and doing the job that you are commissioning them to do as chief. So in 2016 through 2017, our highest count was 435. It declined to 349, then declined to 334. The average for the department has been 410 officers over the last 30 years. What I don't see, and I tried to look, and we really just have too many papers to try to find things. Is this the only, what has our overtime, maybe Mr. Gorman can help with this. The total that we have had in this overtime year to date, it's kind of difficult to do a comparison of what happened in 2016, 2017, where the officers were at 435, because I'm sure we had overtime in 435. And so, we've been talking since I've been on the board for years on what the correct number is for the police department in order to reduce overtime. And we haven't been able to hit that number, and we haven't been able to reduce overtime. And so I'm just wondering if in 2016, has the overtime been lower by a percentage of what we're looking at in this year, or is it all running pretty much the same over these last, at least the 10 years, almost 10 years that I've been here? And I hope you're following the analogy of what I'm getting at. I just don't know that it's a lack of officers. And if you can speak to that, Chief, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so prior to 2017, we didn't pay for detention. And I know detention's a very high line item on overtime. I think it's something like, we have to have it in here too, but 2 million.
1 million, sometimes we go.
Yeah, it goes between 1 or 2 million, but we didn't have detention at all. But I would say that, obviously violent crime and crime scenes and all that drives the number of overtime hours. But I would say that with 435 officers, if they're deployed correctly and we're doing the right things we should be doing, like I know in 2016, 2017, I don't think we were walking many beats with 435, I don't recall, but I would have to look. So kind of taking on this job and taking over and seeing the big picture, what I've always said is, I don't know the exact number, but I know it's not 334 because I could feel it every day. So I want to get to a number, a greater number, maybe 40 or 50 more, closer to 400, and then see what that looks, and then do a survey, do a deployment staffing survey, which a lot of chiefs have talked about. I haven't seen one yet, but we're going to do one and see how the effects of 400 reduces overtime or doesn't, like you're saying. Because in 2016, I know that in 2017, I know we only had 11 homicides. That's the stuff I remember because I was always in the bureau. I bet you the overtime for incidents and scenes was very low because it was only 11 homicides and 60 shootings, which is good for this city. Again, 1 is too many, but 11 and 60 is good. And I remember those numbers being that low, so I would assume that the overtime was much lower. But it's the point that I was trying to make is if I can't fill the cars that are just mandatory minimums, so I'm filling those with overtime, then I'm filling the special beats and the walking beats and everything else to try to reduce the violence with straight overtime. Where when we're up around 435, and if you look down, I saw in 2009, 2010, I think in 2010, we had 7 homicides. We had 453 cops. And I remember, because I was out on the street then, we had walking beats, a lot of walking beats. And I remember there might have been a little overtime for walking beats in different units, but there wasn't a lot of overtime for incidents and investigations because we didn't have a lot of crime. So it's kind of like your crime drives it, but also if I can't fill those original cars, that drives it. I don't know if that helps.
It's very helpful. It's very helpful to know that, or to consider the fact that crime also has an impact on the amount of overtime. If I may through you, Mr. Chair, and it doesn't have to be, because I know that we're in budget and your office is very busy, but it'll be interesting to know when we had our highest officers at 435, what we paid in overtime during that year.
So noted.
Well, I can answer it for you.
Oh.
In 2016, the gross overtime, and this was before we took into account any reimbursements or anything like that, we paid $5.7 million in that year in total overtime. So again, that's not a breakout or anything of the chief, that's just overall. It was $5.6 million.
And then what we would have to do is consider what the crime rate was also in 2016.
Yeah, and I know it was definitely lower than it is right now.
And from a monetary perspective, I think what you also have to take into account is like at that time it was a lower hourly rate, things like that. So we would have to kind of equate that to now's time to figure out to do an apples to apples comparison. But again, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But
and I really appreciate that, because I think that that's important information for us to consider as we're considering transferring this extraordinary amount of money, $4.3 million to cover overtime. My last question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You said pay for cars. I didn't understand what that meant, that you have to pay for the car for the officer. Maybe I heard you wrong.
No. The car is the beat. I'm sorry.
Oh,
So pay for a regular beat car.
I see.
Sorry.
Police talk, okay.
It's an officer, it's an officer.
I'm
The cars aren't free, we pay for those too, not every day.
Okay, I was thinking, are you paying for the car? To keep it over? It's okay.
Yeah, Alyssa just said it, we're paying for the car overtime, the officer in the car overtime. But those cars would normally be full, that was my point.
Okay.
By frontline officers that are hired.
I got it. If I keep hanging around you, I'm gonna have a badge soon. I got it. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there another question? Yes, Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, those cars are transformers. I have a few questions. Now, just for clarification, you said the gross overtime in 2016 was 5.6 million, so that could include a whole range of things, not just officers. Is that correct?
well, that's not a problem. That's everything, officers, captains, lieutenants, that's just the overtime for the overall department. But as the chief said, there are certain things to get reimbursed for, such as task force and other things. So yes, that 5.6 is just the overtime number before you account for any reimbursements.
Okay. I just want to make it clear that it's, when you said gross, kind of throws you off. Okay, I am going to get down and dirty. Can you explain or talk on this overtime? Generally, a lot of these items are in the capital budget. So supplies, et cetera, did we not budget enough? I mean, here you're saying training and supply equipment, 80,000, uniforms.
Yeah. Well, first off, things cost more money now. You saw supply chain issues. Ammunition is ridiculous. I think the original budget for ammunition was something,
we used to pay like, say, $100,000, and we used to be able to pay it out of capital, then I believe they changed the rules. Because ammunition is done as soon as you shoot the gun, you're not able to say it's like the 5-year shelf life anymore, so we had to move that to our equipment line. And yeah, if the order was fine with 100,000, we need to up it to 200,000, because they do a lot of training with the recruits, and we're having more recruits come in that are cycling through. I think that adds to it as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not gonna answer for the budget last year because it wasn't mine, but this is what I see the need for, and it's not like we're just trying to spend the money, we know these areas are close, like the training line. We've done more training than we've ever done, but we've needed it this year, right? And we needed to show the community, like, we need to square some things away, we need to do more training, so that cost us more money. Detention as well, there were some big fixes in there that needed to be done. The other thing we're heading towards is accreditation. So according to the police accountability bill, we have to be accredited by the post council, by November of 2023. An example of that is the property room. We've had some issues with the property room that were never corrected by past chiefs, and now I'm spending a bunch of money to try to fix it, and I have to. I can't kick it down the road because we have to be accredited by November 2023. So we found a lot of expenses that we're concerned about due to the accreditation. And it's right, we should be accredited. We've never been accredited, so we should be accredited. Now we have to be accredited by November 2023. So a lot of different things in here. So, for example, we're going through, and this isn't an item that costs money, but we're going through all 50 general orders, and we're making sure they fall in line with accreditation. And then we're sending them to Corporation Council, and we're looking for things that we're not doing that we should be doing, Along with that accreditation, there's items that we have to purchase.
And, and I get that. I'm gonna say that the answer is no, we did not budget enough in the capital budget, and we're on a 2-year cycle. And the point is that we are gonna be voting on a budget this year. And did you budget enough in the capital budget to cover these costs for the next fiscal year?
So let me correct something, is that these items that they're here before the transfer are general fund items. It has nothing to do with the capital budget. There are certain standards we have to maintain per generally accepted accounting principle. These items do not classify as capital.
Okay.
So we wouldn't include them in the capital budget. Again, I think as the chief mentioned, some of these things are just now coming up. And as they come up, we try to adjust within the budget, whether it's mid-year or as we're looking at the budget cycle. So again, if this happens next year, if something comes up, again, we have no problem coming to the board if we need to do a transfer if something came up of some sort. So again, budgeting is an art and a science at the same time, because some of these things come up after the budget cycle, right? So we just try to adjust. But again, these items that we're talking about do not classify as capital expenditures.
But it's the same question, right? So we didn't budget enough in the general fund budget, and did we budget enough for this fiscal year? So it really, pick a pocket, really. General fund, capital, we still have to shell out money no matter how you look at it. So I just want to make sure that we are on the right track with even the budget we are going to be.
So I think we're on the right track again. As things come up, we adjust. I think, some of the stuff that the chief mentioned just came up mid-year, right? So we wouldn't have known about this last year as we were doing the budget cycle. So even if that happens next year, as we submitted the mayor's budget and we go through this process, if the chief needs something in November that comes up, we have to adjust within the allocation or come and do a transfer. But, we go through the budget process and we work out everything with the chief within what we can. We meet with them during the process, and that's how we come up with the police budget. But again, things are gonna come up.
And I get it. And we've done transfers before, but we're looking at a lot of money here. And I want to make sure that we're doing everything possible, of course, to maintain the safety of our officers. That's the #1 priority. But also to make sure that we're on target with spending. And if we're overspending or whatever it may be. As far as, can you talk a little bit on, you said the department's printing and binding. Does the printing also include like police reports that people pay for?
Well, I mean, that's paper that we pay for, but I wouldn't say that's an expense. I mean, the biggest expense to the new guy that's down there was kind of finding his way and fixing equipment, but also me mandating that everybody's gonna have 250 business cards and hand them out. It was a bigger expense than I thought it was,
Okay.
you know?
I just wanted to clarify, because we do charge for certain items that
Oh,
residents
yes.
pick up. So does any of that balance off some of these?
Well, I mean, it is in the next proposed budget, how much money we bring in. I mean, it's not a lot, but yeah, the records division does bring in some money from print, you know, giving people reports and whatnot.
Okay. You know, and I appreciate the arrest being made and our investigative unit working as hard. I think they earned their money. But what has changed with the arrest being made this year versus last year? Is it that we have more personnel in that department?
No, I think it's the technology, like I talked about before, the cameras, the LPRs, we have Star Chase now, we have stop sticks, we have things to stop. Normally, if someone took off, we just have, okay, they took off. We'll see another day, right? But now we have technology that helps us track and catch people, you know. And I was thinking about this question because you're gonna say, I'm spending money and we're making arrests, but we had 5 homicides at the beginning of the year. But I would say to you, we had 5 homicides in January. And then we were able to make a lot of arrests and quiet it down a little bit. I knock on wood saying that because you never know. But we, you know, by the end of January, I was ready to, you know, what do we need to do? And we went back to what we normally do, and we used the technology, and we made a ton of arrests. We've made 7 murder arrests already this year, homicide arrests. Some were for 2022, some were for 2021, but mostly 2023, where last year, all year, we made 7 homicide arrests. So this technology and the direction we're going in, I believe, is getting us in a better place when it comes to violent crime. You'll see those results hopefully as the summer goes through.
And the cameras that you're talking about, are those the ones that we approved that have been placed? Have they all been placed?
Nope, there's still more going in, but we're up to 50 license plate readers, which 4 months ago we had none. So we're getting there.
Okay, let's see. I think that was it. You mentioned the detention center and that costing $1 to $2 million in overtime. And there's talk of that possibly going to the state. Is that it? Is that what the marshals?
Yeah, there was a legislative proposal at the state to have the marshals come back and take over the detention facility. Now, that would be a huge chunk of overtime, not just because we don't have to pay for detention. 5 officers and a supervisor come out of detention and they go hit the street. So those empty cars will be filled without overtime.
And that's where I was leading. So actually it's a benefit
Yes.
for us to give it back because they once did hold the responsibility for the detention center. And if we could gain that $1 to $2 million back plus some, then it would be to our benefit.
But even more importantly, my officers are a 26-week program and maybe only 2 days it has to do with guarding a detention facility. So I've used some of this training money to train more of the people that work down in detention after that incident we had. So now I won't have to go train them in any detention facility because I won't have it anymore. And I think that's truly important too.
Now, some of these funds, did I hear correctly, are coming from the vacancies, right? And
I think they all are.
is it all?
All.
So we have 4.6 million
Yes.
worth of vacancies.
And I think it's important to say that, or maybe I shouldn't say it, Mike, but we're not gonna go over that budget. This is just money that we had put aside for those things. So our staffing, even though it's in overtime, it's equivalent to the people that we're missing.
Okay. And I just wanted that clarification, just
Yes,
to,
ma'am.
there was a lot said tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Fester. Is there another question? One from committee? Seeing none. We want to thank you, Chief, and a good job that you're doing in our city. I want to thank you, and just let you know that Ward 3 is looking a little better. So I know that the work you're doing is valuable to us in Ward 3. Thank you so very much.
Of course, it's my people. And I want to thank Alyssa. She has a lot to do with helping me do a budget, because this is stuff that, you know, in 3 years or 3 or 4 years, hopefully be an ace. But this was a tough year, you know, to sit in front of the budget and get the concept. That's why I want to put those overtime restraints and restrictions on sergeants and lieutenants, so they know when they get in this seat what the money's all about and why it is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work, Chief. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm still here.
You're still here. Okay.
Well, going to our workshop,
Yes, we can vote on this item. Thank you. Absolutely. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? The budget transfer for the police department. Is there anyone from the public that would like to testify on this item? One more time. Is there anyone from the public? Yes. Hi. Yes, come.
For the record, ma'am, yes.
Grab a mic.
Grab one of the microphones and just be ready.
Yeah,
Closer
to you.
Okay, I don't want to get onto it. Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Maloney. I actually live in West Haven. I work in New Haven. I live at 98 Fairview Avenue, West Haven, Connecticut. I work at New Haven Legal Assistance Association right over on Orange Street. I'm a community organizer here in New Haven. I've been organizing for about 5 years, working with mostly housing insecure individuals and people dealing with like poor conditions in their apartments. I talk to like dozens of tenants a month and who are dealing with a lot of these issues. And tonight, from my understanding, we're talking about the police budget, trying to increase the police budget, as well as another department, which I'm learning about. I have some notes here because I'm just learning about it today.
I'm sorry. This is concerning the ordinance that we have transferring the funding.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So, so this is about the budget, the finance budget meetings, right?
No, this is just item number 2, where we're just transferring money into the police.
And I thought that, like the entire meeting tonight, though, is also about like the budget of the community resilience department and. Okay, but my topic is related to that though. Can I just get to it, or? They're very related. And,
we haven't heard from them yet about the overall budget.
Okay, well then what I'll do is is that the next item or?
Staff.
Sounds like she should have been here for the public
The
testimony.
public testimonies that came before.
Which are already closed out.
Right.
There's another public testimony later on next month.
So.
Or you can leave your testimony.
So, basically, I mean, there's, the topics are very related, and if I could just, it's gonna be super quick.
All right.
Okay, all right, so from my understanding, the Community Resilience Department, there are 5 different, let's see, sorry, now I'm like thrown off here. There are 5 different programs folded into the Resilience Department, which are very important. Violence prevention, crisis response, housing and homelessness, health initiatives, actually, and then like data, but basically, I know you heard from the police department just now on, their budget and all the benefits that they're going to be, that will be provided from increasing their budget and transferring funds into their budget. And from my understanding, they're asking for an increase of $5 million. And I know that this is also with the fire department as well. And I don't know what the breakdown is off the top of my head. And what I also learned today is that the Community Resilience Department has a total budget of $2 million compared to, on average now, of course, I don't know the numbers in front of me, but around $59 million for the police department. Again, don't quote me on that. That's, But basically what I'm requesting today is that as you're making, these important decisions on increasing funding toward the police budget, and I'm just hoping that you'll keep in mind to consider these really important other issues that impact our community, and to think about how we can use these funds to really get at the root of the issues that our police department deals with every day. And, think about how we can increase money toward, homelessness. In the news the other day, there was an encampment that was broken, broken down and removed by, I think, over 10 police officers. So if we're using funds toward, breaking down homelessness encampments, how can we use these funds more effectively to actually get to the root of the issue and help the homeless community and all the departments and all the good work that the Community Resilience Department handles on a regular basis. So that is my request, is just as you're thinking about this funding, how can we allocate more funding and what are we really prioritizing today? So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on the budget transfer for the police department only?
Anyone else from the public that'd like to speak? On the budget transfer? Is there another that'd like to speak?
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public portion of this meeting this evening.
Second.
The motion has been moved and second. Discussion. Hearing none. Public portion. Oh my God. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, and we are shutting down this part of closing this part of public testimony. Next.
Mr. Chair, I move item number 2.
The item has been moved and second. Any discussion? Alderman Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in support of this transfer. As the chief has said in testimony and the documentation that we see, he has been doing a yeoman's job with trying to get things in place. And as we know, because we're down on over 100 police officers, that money is necessary in order to keep our New Haven safe. And so I do agree with this transfer, and I hope the rest of this committee agrees too. Thank you.
Alder Walker Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The presentation that we heard had so much information. It really broke it down that it made it so easy to understand where this money is going to be going. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to fill all the positions, but fortunately, we have this money to be able to do exactly what the police department needs today. The training, the things we heard that's needed because of the police accountability bill. And I think having a foresight to figure out how we actually get that done so we make sure we hit the November 2023 date is very important. So I'm in full support of this transfer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also in support of the item, the transfer. We know that the police department has gone through a lot of transition, and the chief has been working very hard. I commend him on the yeoman's task that he's been doing, and I ask everyone to support the transfer and continue to keep our city safe. Thank you.
Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also support favorably this item. I think it's important to note that this is a transfer within the department. So it is coming from police services salary accounts and moving over to overtime, travel, training, equipment, et cetera. So it's not a transfer coming from another department. This money has already been allocated within that department. They're just moving it for accounting purposes. So again, I support this item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any more? All right, thank you so very much. I too am in favor of this transfer. And as I stated before, I do think the police department is doing a fine job in our city. And I want to make sure that they continue to do the work that they're doing for our communities. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Item is moved forward.
Item is moved forward. We want to welcome our chair of the Finance Committee, Alder Adam Ashan. We will take a 5-minute break to transition. So please, we reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you. Then the police department will be heard.
Thank you. All right. My timing was perfect.
Make sure you have all the documents because there's.
Yeah,
You want to transfer?
I'll move down.
Thank you.
This is your copy. Yeah, one says 2022 and 2023, 22, 24.
There's something we can do about it.
The 5 by 7.
Just 3. Yeah. Yeah. 3.
4 actually, because of the other.
Yeah. 4.
Okay. Good evening.
I'm right behind you.
I was talking through the books today. She said that there was a time when she and her husband was tire six and how you doing, Alder Festa?
I'm good, Alder Marchand. How are you? Good.
Glad to be here.
Welcome. Are you sure?
Well, there you go. Yeah, no, that's right. I didn't understand what was She's involved, right? Oh, yeah. I gave her up, chasing people with guns, they're chasing her down, getting guns.
It's hard. You get.
Something walking spacious. I have a question, it's outside of my expertise, but as a layperson. No. We feel that we
You're seven, try to make it after, you can make it. Like the security.
Yeah, you want to get the ice cream sodas.
Yes, yes. Field training? No. Hey, I'll take 6 here, 5 here, they all out. A couple people want to come back, or relatively strong want to come back. Oh, yes, right.
Hello, Alder Singh. Hello. It's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, sir.
There. So colleagues in that, at 7:25, let's go. Good evening, everyone. We're going to begin in just about a minute.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, do you mind if I grab a couple of these folks that are sitting?
If they're extra, then yes, that's fine.
They look like they're sitting in the middle of the table.
Yeah, I think everybody has those things, right? What's this one here?
That's the fire department.
Oh, I need one.
This is a company.
Fire department, police department. Okay.
Thank you.
One was the transfer. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your patience as we took a brief comfort break. We are calling the meeting back to order. I want to thank Vice Chair Hurt for running the first portion of this meeting in my absence. I also wish to thank former Chair Alder Hamilton for her assistance. Teamwork makes the dream work. And now we are in the public portion of the meeting is closed. We will now proceed with the departmental budgetary workshops. We have police services, fire services, then community resilience. We will begin with the police services. I see that the staff are already here. If you would please start by giving us your names and addresses for the record, and then the floor will be yours.
Michael Gormley, City Acting Controller, 45 Jefferson Road, Branford, Connecticut.
Regina Rush Kittle, CAO, 2 Front Street, New Haven, Connecticut.
Melissa Epson, Supervisor of Management Services, 476 Barberry Road, East Haven, Connecticut.
Carl Jacobson, Chief of Police, 15 Westerly Road, New Haven, Connecticut.
The floor is yours.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for the prior vote. I appreciate your time and patience on that matter. I'll try to go as fast as I can on this, but again, this is an important thing as well.
And Chief, I believe you're referring to the presentation that we have?
Yes, so if you could open the presentation to the first page. Thank you, sir. We're saving money by printing on both sides.
And saving the planet too, Chief.
Well, yeah. This is idea, wasn't it? So we wanted to break this budget into the categories that were discussed: jobs for New Haven residents and a safer city for everyone. On the jobs, I have asked for 7 sworn new positions: a lieutenant, 3 sergeants, and 3 detectives. I'm going to kind of break this down as I go along. I break it down again somewhere else, but I'll break it down as I go along. I think it's more worthy that way. So the new lieutenant will be a lieutenant of the Youth Bureau. I've come to you several times with proposals and plans and talked extensively about expanding our Youth Bureau to have PAL and SRO operating under a lieutenant of Youth Bureau. The sergeant position, one would be PAL, one would be SRO. The 3rd sergeant would be in the Bureau as we are looking to restart a homicide cold case unit. And then the 3 detectives, we have a lot of needs in the Detective Bureau related around intel and the homicide cold case unit. And just to elaborate on that a little more, we found that having a homicide, just a plain homicide unit with our staffing levels now wasn't the right thing to do. We kind of overstressed some detectives. We had 4 detectives and a sergeant in 2021 as the homicide unit. They caught 26 homicides. That was too much. It wasn't the right strategy. So we changed that to now we have the Bureau has a major crime squad. Those major crime squads have 4 sergeants, 4 units with 5 to 6 detectives in each unit. So now the homicides are distributed that way. So potentially everybody might get 1 or 2, but they're not getting 6 each, which they did. And honestly, it's something that I've had to bear as the assistant chief of detectives after in 2019, our detective division was cut. Because I actually saw one of my own classmates retire earlier than he probably wanted to because he was great homicide detective, knew how to talk to the community, but he had so many homicides and it really hit him hard. And I don't want to do that to the detectives. Now that it's been split up, as you see, we have more solves going on, and that's how you do it. But the expansion with the 3 detectives, 3 sergeants, and 1 lieutenant is really important. My first budget, I came with 30 new positions, and then Alyssa taught me better, along with other people in this group here. But I believe I can fill those positions too. Because you're going to say to me, can you fill those positions? I believe I can fill those positions, and I believe they're important to be filled. The second line is 3 civilians positions, 1 crime analyst, and 2 municipal assistant animal control officers. We all know the struggles we've had with animal control. And I would say to you that the animals that weren't eating, that were undernourished, it wasn't because we weren't feeding them. We were feeding them. It's just we had too many animals there. And if you want to do it animals per personnel, way too many animals per personnel. So we decided we've already put some part-time officers there. We changed out the full-time officer because I think the kid who was there, I don't think he purposely did anything wrong. He was just there for 8 years. He's a police officer. He needed to go back to the street and be a police officer, and he's done a good job by going back to the street. So I think it was important to have more municipal civilian positions in that role. to help the animals. There's a lot of people who care about animals. You know, me, myself, I was devastated by those pictures, and I just don't want that to happen again. So we expanded the animal civilian wise. For the 23-24, we're expecting to have enough vacant positions to hire for 2 police academy classes. We have recruitment efforts focusing on New Haven residents, jobs for New Haven residents. I just hired 6 last night. 3 of the 6 are New Haven residents. And 2 of them grew up, one grew up in Fairhaven, one grew up in the Hill, bilingual Hispanic males, excellent people. The third one, I can't remember where he grew up, but we're just really pushing that New Haven resident side. And I'm gonna revert back to my youth bureau. That's where we start hitting the kids young, make a youth bureau, cadet program, get more New Haven residents hired. The next bullet is proposed budget maintains funding for the Explorer program and cadets is just what I was thinking it was right there. So as recruitment tools and also keeping kids out of trouble. Safer city for everyone. The 7 sworn positions will allow for the reestablishment of some of the specialized units. So I was talking about the major crimes units, how we split up the current homicides, but there's homicides that date back 5 years, 10 years, and I really want to establish that unit that's going to look at every single homicide again with a fresh set of eyes. That was the other thing when my classmate retired. He said, I keep looking at the same thing and it's not telling me anything different. And then we've handed some of those cases out. I don't know if you recall, a couple of months ago, we solved the 2011 homicide. Brand new detective, because he looked at it in a different angle, went out and talked to the people and was able to put the case together. So that's part of getting justice for the citizens, but also keeping the city safer. We'll continue our efforts to recruit and retain officers to achieve staffing levels that will allow the department to increase or enhance community policing practices, quality of life and details, task force participation. Like I said, the task forces are valuable, but I'd rather have the cop on the street if it comes down to it. I have half the amount I would normally have in the task forces, and they were still able to pull off a great case. That federal case from last week, 2 homicides and 10 shootings were solved. So we need to get those levels back up so that we can put those guys and girls into those task forces. We will continue to work with Compass to enhance services to the community. I myself, driving into work, have seen, homeless people or people with substance abuse issues and call Compass myself. I think it's a good idea. We have to see what happens. I do agree with the Alder Furlow and say, right now we got to come first. And then we got to understand some of those situations may not need a cop, and we'll work that out and we'll figure it out. But I am 100% behind the Compass team. The police department will continue to work with transportation, traffic, parking, public works, and other city departments to increase public safety, pedestrian, and bicycle safety. I'm concerned about vehicular accidents. I'm concerned about vehicular deaths just as much as everyone. I doubled the amount of people in the traffic unit, and traffic tickets are up 300% every month this year. So I'm excited about that. I don't want to give a lot of tickets, but we got to slow everybody down. I used to never get calls about traffic enforcement. Now I get calls, oh, they give me a ticket. Okay, pay the ticket, slow down. But I know they're working and they're doing it because I get those calls and I appreciate that. And as we fill the ranks, that's another unit that I found to be invaluable, that motor unit. Granted, we think of them on motorcycles, but that's not all they do. They have other cars, they have positions, they have posts they go at, they take care of quality life issues, abandoned cars. They do a lot for the city. So we're going to increase that unit as well. The next bullet is proposed budget increase funds for training. Trainings are necessary to keep up with best practices in policing and offer officer retention. Something I haven't done in the public, like news or anything. One of the trainings we added to de-escalation is Kinjian. I have talked to you guys about it. That's turned out to be awesome. It's a Martin Luther King Principles. There's an actual book. We did it here in the late 90s, I believe under Pastor. But now we have community members, some clergy from the community teaching that to the cadets. I wanted to give it a go and see how it went. I went there. They said exactly what I wanted to say. They talked about how different parts of the community react when officers show up. And man, the cadets really enjoyed it. It was a view that they really needed to see. So we're going to continue some of those trainings monies. We're going to continue programs like that. The other thing we've had is the survivors of homicide actually came in and talked to our officers and said, this is how we'd like to see you talk to someone who lose their loved ones. You know, I went to that one as well. And that was extremely moving. And that's what they need. They don't need to just be trained as police officers. They need the community helping out with the training. And that's what I'm committed to doing. Proposed budget funds included to support a new public safety technologies that have been introduced. So the license plate readers, the cameras are all working. They're all moving in the right direction. But an amount of money is needed to sustain them through the years. And not a lot amount. The Star Chase program, the initial payment was a lot, but it's a small amount of money to keep through yearly. So we have increased some of those line items that, that I didn't even know. I said, why did this go up? Well, because we got to support these things that are working, right? So budget includes funding for community-based events to strengthen relationships between police and community. This is something we've never had before, where the district managers, when they have events, they normally don't need any money or a lot of money, but we've put available, they usually use their own money, to be quite honest, but we put some money aside, so if they want to rent a bouncy house for kids, or the car seats, we want to fund car seats for people in neighborhoods where they can't afford car seats. Now we got the training where the officers know how to put them in, and we're going to provide car seats. So that'll be by the district managers. They'll have a small budget that they're all for just community events and just for community purposes. Never had it before. The cops asked me to put that in, but they also made a commitment that, Chief, if you give me $1,500 as a district manager, I'm probably going to put $1,500 of my own money in too. And I know that because I've seen them all do it. Okay, we'll go to the next page, the mayor's proposed budget overview.
Chief, so the next slide that you have, slide number 3, is really the mayor's proposed budget overview, which we'll get into in a few slides. But as you can see, as mentioned, we have 3 aspects to the mayor's proposed budget. We have the general fund, which is increasing by $2.7 million in the overall budget. Some of that is overtime, some of that is non-personnel costs that the chief just mentioned. We do have a slide later on that kind of lists some of the non-personnel and personnel increases. You see the special funds budget within their department. Again, special funds are really grants and other things that come to the board, or things that have already been allocated that may be a multi-year purpose. In the police department's case, the board has already heard a lot of what the special funds grants are. It's ARPA, so the camera projects, police vehicles, so on and so forth. And then we have the capital budget. As mentioned in the prior presentation with the question, we are in a budget cycle right now for capital. So we will be looking to bond for 2 years on the capital side. So again, the police department's budget in capital is 1.9 million, and then 600,000 using previously approved ARPA funds that are being reallocated. So moving on to the next slide, slide number 4, which outlines the mayor's proposed budget. So again, with the police department, it's a lot of the continuation of what the board has seen in previous years related to capital, which really relates to public safety. So we're really looking at 3 categories with capital, radios, equipment, and the police facility renovation. So radios, we're looking at 600,000. Again, as I did in the budget overview, we're using ARPA funds. that were previously allocated towards other projects that we can reallocate as part of the capital budget. That's going to be 600,000. There's 1.4 million, which is equipment for police services. So this is primarily like their vest and other public safety equipment that has a life cycle. As the chief mentioned earlier, you know, especially as we upgrade and look at different techniques, it's important that we equip the police department with the right equipment. So that's $1.4 million. And then the facility renovations. Chief, if you want to speak on the facility renovations.
That amount is 500,000, correct? Yeah. So we've got to convert the current cell doors, which are bars, to steel doors, which do not have any access points for tying, so people are less likely to commit suicide. We don't have an ADA compliant cell, which means we don't have a handicap cell. We're going to make a handicap cell. You know, right now, if someone comes in a handicap capacity, they would either go to the hospital or they would be in the cell without their wheelchair, because they could use the wheelchair to hurt themselves. So we really need this. This is important. We're remodeling the detention lobby for safety and to improve service to the public. You know, that's part of that proposal with the buzzer, which is a little bit of money, but we're talking about changing the whole front door into a buzzer system, and then also changing the back area where you can see inside. So when you come in, it's not like it's right now, it's like sprayed glass, right? We're going to keep it there so you can see us and you can talk to us, because that's a big complaint of the public too. But the complaint of the officers was, well, sometimes we can't talk to them because we're not ready. Well, the door will lock, they buzz you, you tell them hold on for how long it's going to be, and then you let them in when you're ready, and then you greet everybody the same way and treat everybody appropriately. The lobby upgrade would include the camera, the intercom, the electric lock. Capital funds include any hardware, software, planning, design, training, first year licensing, data conversion, project manager, management, legal consulting, and any other associated costs necessary for this project.
All right, thank you, Chief. Again, like with other city facilities, police would work in conjunction with engineering to work on this particular project. Going to the next slide, slide number 5 just gives an overview. This is one of the departments that has revenue associated. There are really no overall revenue changes. There was a slight decrease in general fingerprinting. This had to do with a few years ago, the city possibly taking over the fingerprinting at the police department. That was based on conversations with the state, correct? The state, but that did not come to fruition. So again, the city didn't realize as much revenue with fingerprinting because we're not doing it ourselves. So we looked at the budget and decreased that, but there was a particular based on actuals that we see in towing revenue. As you know, there's a towers list that's produced by the police department, and certain services that the police department provides requires towing, which is a fee that we charge. So again, those two revenues kind of offset, but the police department does generate a small amount of revenue in the general fund budget. As far as fee changes, the only fee change in the police department is the animal shelter fees, which is redeeming a pet from $20 to $15. Again, this is not a fee that we control here at the city, as you can see listed on the slide. This is actually set by Connecticut General Statute. So when that changes, we change that in the corresponding budget. Moving to slide number 6, really just gives a general fund break. This is a general fund expenditure breakdown of their department going into fiscal year 2023-2024. As you can see, almost 70% of the budget is made up of personnel for police department, with the next major chunk of their budget being overtime. Again, this is the fiscal year 23-24 breakdown by roll-up category, within the budget. So moving on to the next slide, really just gives you an overall sense of budgeted personnel within the police department. Again, you heard some of the areas the chief mentioned during the last presentation on overtime, but what the mayor's proposed budget would bring is, with the 7 new positions, our total fully funded sworn positions up to 400. So again, that's fully funded. That does not include the dollar positions, which, as you see, are listed below, which are 16 officer positions at $1 and then 1 assistant chief. But again, this includes the 7 new positions that the chief mentioned earlier on. The next slide shows the civilian portion of the police department. Again, this would increase by 3 positions, which includes a crime analyst and the 2 municipal animal control officers. But this just gives a breakdown so you can kind of get a sense of the civilianized operations side of the police department and what it entails. So you have like account clerks who do payroll, executive assistants, GIS analysts, so on and so forth. But this just gives you a breakdown that we would go from 56 to 59 in the mayor's proposed budget.
And if I could just jump in, the crime analyst position will be, those 2 positions will be working in the real-time intel center. So for example, a shot spotter goes off, they make sure they're looking at the cameras in the area where the shot spotter goes off and the LPRs, and they'll be able to get on the radio and put out to officers, responding officers, there's a red Ford license plate, blah, 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 fleeing the area. I mean, Hartford does this, Bridgeport does this, they're very successful in doing this.
And I'm gonna note that the chief was so thorough in presentation, he actually just talked about the next slide of personnel, which goes into what he mentioned earlier about the 7 positions and trying to create the new units. But, you know, talking about the civilianized one of the crime analyst and the 2 municipal animal control officers. So as he just mentioned, the new intel center and a few other areas.
If I could just note this bullet, I really liked, Melissa came up with it. NHPD is a young department with 32% having less than 5 years and only 13% with 15 years or more experience. So that frontline supervision is crucial to the development of new officers and detectives. But what I say to you too is, and you know, we don't have the cops to teach like we used to, but we have good cops to teach, and we don't have the older cops that maybe learned it a different way. So here's a real opportunity to really shape this police department how we want to shape it. And if we give these kids what they need and move them forward, we're gonna have a police department that we all want to have. Oh, and the other one that was very shocking to me is there's over 900 intakes of animals at the shelter and approximately 1,000 investigations of animal-related calls and concerns. So we definitely need that help at the animal shelter.
Moving on to the next slide, I'm actually going to let the chief talk about this, but I think he mentioned some of it in the previous presentation regarding the overtime transfer. But the mayor's proposed budget does increase the gross overtime from 10.6 million to 11.6 million in the mayor's proposed budget, so $1 million increase in overtime. So chief, want to talk a little bit about overtime?
Yeah, so the general overtime, we're looking at an increase of 900,000 to 9,900,000. Event overtime stayed the same. Savvy, we increased by 100,000. And I think Savvy is being redefined. I think in the past, we used to use those as 2-person cars, stopping cars, that type of thing. I'm gonna use it for walking beats and making sure that the cops are seen in the community. Detention, again, $1 million. That's a lot of overtime. And that brings our gross overtime budget to 11,650. I sit here and I hope that we're not that we get to staffing levels we need and we're not here again. And it's just, and it's possible. It's definitely possible.
Thank you, Chief. I think that's the general consensus. When we were putting together the budget and looking at staffing, recruitment, and retention of officers, and really looking at the overtime budget and trying to come up with a number as we could look at filling sworn positions and the time that it takes in getting them on the street and coming up with the overtime budget of $11.6 million. So again, as the chief said, we're currently working hard to look at these numbers and fill, recruit and fill the classes so we can get them out on the street. Moving to the next slide, slide 11. You actually just seen this in the last presentation, but this is just a summary of the gross overtime plus reimbursements to get you to the net number. Slide number 12 kind of just goes over some of the non-personnel changes in the department. So I'll let Alyssa or the chief kind of talk about this slide.
So each line, I'll run through each line item quickly. We're increasing $46.90 for administrative registration dues and subscriptions. We actually have a full command staff again, and I'm trying to keep my command staff linked into all the top agency changes and everything that's going on. So for instance, we're all part of the International Police Chiefs Association, Connecticut Police Chiefs Association, and organizations like PERF, which is the Police Executive Research Forum. We get free mail, well, they're not free, you gotta pay your dues, but we get mailings all the time with the best practices, what's going on in law enforcement, how to better recruit and retain, and most importantly, different grants that we could apply for as a police department. So those have gone up, but I would say that's because my my command staff is getting bigger. Decrease of 30,000 for admin maintenance agreements to account for the city's transfer of telecommunication expenses to a central budget line.
That's just the city, I think it was last year, this fiscal year, put the cell phone expenses into essential services account, and it was left over in our budget, so we just wanted to take that line out because it's no longer needed. It's being taken care of somewhere else.
And overall, I know we just asked for the 70,000 for the budget transfer, but we increased next year's budget to 70,000 for training. And if you look at last year and this year, that's exactly what we asked you for more. So we're expecting to have about the same amount of money. We're a young department and training is critical. And I would say also that when officers come to you and they find trainings, if you're able to offer it to them and actually pay for it. I remember being a young officer and the attitude was basically, you're going to do the trainings we want you to do, not things that you want to do, because that costs money, right? But that's not how I feel that I should lead, and I feel like we need to give them, if we're making them do all these trainings, we also have to let them do some trainings that they're interested in. You know, you have somebody that wants to be on the motor unit, but hasn't had any training, we could send them to do that. There's many officers that like to be further trained in different first aid techniques, different takedown techniques, handcuffing techniques. So the more we can train them, the better they're going to be, especially with such a young force. And I tell you, that's something that boosts morale. That's something that boosts morale. We can't say, go to de-escalation training, go to this training, go to taser training. Oh, chief, can I go to this on, you know, how to be a woman in law enforcement? No, I can't afford that. I don't want to be that chief. So I think it's a big morale boost too. Increase of 50,000 for administrative and other contractual services for anticipated annual increases for existing necessary services, as well as expected new expenses that will be incurred as the department seeks accreditation. This is all about accreditation. To even get the run through for accreditation, it costs money. It costs money to send people to train so we can prepare for accreditation. I just want to make sure we get this right. We're supposed to have it. We need to have it. So it is costing us some extra money. Establishment of support services, other contractual budget line, 300,000 to support the department, new technology services and tools. This comes back down to the fees and licenses related to the new technology. We are, between DNA machine, between the magnet machine between our cell phone, or I can't even think of the name of it now. Oh, Cellbrite, it dumps cell phones automatically. Once you need a search warrant, but once you get the search warrant, plug it in, dumps the cell phone, categorizes the information for officers, or you would literally get 500 pages and you wouldn't, know how to go through it. So it is expensive, but these things make the job quicker for the officers, for the detectives. So that's the point. I keep talking about solves. Well, we have less detectives than ever, and we're still making those solves because we're giving them this technology. And again, that's a huge morale boost. Increase of 45,000 for printing and binding services to account for significant cost increases to the industry and allow departments to keep up with current required forms of documents and enhanced community outreach initiatives, which include, we make recruitment flyers, business cards, door knockers. Again, we didn't have much of this expense before. We had a printer a few years back who was a little elderly and didn't do a lot of the stuff. Now, and we didn't have to recruit very often before, right? Just 1,000 people showed up and wanted the job. Now we have to go out there and get people, and that's important and costs money.
I didn't update that before I printed it, so it's 65,000.
Oh, okay. 65,000.
65,000 for the printing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, for the next line, the community-based program.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I didn't, so this is the line item that we talked about earlier in the presentation. The established essential services community-based programs budget line for activities, but not included to events in each district, gun buybacks and holiday events. So that's 65,000. I had it at 60, I was close. Each district manager will have a small budget of their own, under 5,000, I think it comes to around 5,000, 7,500. And then we'll have other for gun buybacks. Gun buybacks are quite expensive, but they do get guns off the street, so we want to continue to do them. Overall increase of 63,000 to the animal shelter non-personal budget lines. I'll read each one. 1,100 to building and ground maintenance, 13,000 to food and food project to account for the increase in animal intakes as COVID restrictions have loosened and ended, and the increase in prices seen since the onset of the pandemic. Increase of 5,000 to medical supplies to keep up with the price increases and increase in animal intakes. Increase of 3,000 to advertisement to ensure adequate funds to meet advisory requirements. So we got to try to give away the animals too and find homes. We didn't do a good job of that because that's why we were overcrowded. So it's been a real eye opener for me. I've never dealt with the animal shelter. I have people on my staff who have, and they're getting me up to speed, but we need to put some money and care into this animal shelter so that we can get the animals out and find them owners. Increase of 41,613 to other contractual services for veterinarian expenses. The budget line pays for veterinarian that comes to the shelter each week to provide veterinarian care, as well as veterinarian services provided at veterinarian hospitals for emergency care. Now, that's the other thing. The veterinarian will come like twice a month. We're making sure they come once a week. I just think there's things that were lax there, maybe to save money. I don't think anyone did anything malicious, but we're going to stay on it. We need to take care of the animals.
So I think, as you can see from the budget overview, we took and looked working with the chief on where we needed to increase the budget, especially with the current staffing levels, the needs, training, and other areas. So with that, Mr. Chair, I believe that's the end of the presentation, so we'll take questions and answers.
Thank you, Mr. Romanich, Chief, for your presentation. It's very detailed. It helps us to understand what is proposed to be different from the budget that you have now. And we will now hear from colleagues to see who has questions. I just want to remind colleagues that this is not a general workshop on the operations of the police department. That would be held by the Public Safety Committee. This is a workshop on the budget proposal. So if you have questions, please direct them to something that's in this presentation related to the budget proposed for next year. Having said that, the queue is open for colleagues who wish to ask questions. Alder Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. Chief, I noticed, when you talked about, the events, in districts, gun buyback and holiday events, I ask the same question every year. Are you going, I think this will fall there, are you going to do the Citizens Academy? What are your proposals around that? Because I think the Citizens Academy is very important to the community because it really allows the community, when you can get a seat in the class, to get an understanding from the perspective of the police when policing the community at large.
Yeah, so I have money left over in this year's budget to do one before July 1st. So we're gonna do one now, and then we're gonna do another one in the fall at least, and we're also gonna do another clergy academy. We had a clergy academy in the fall that was 50 some odd people. So yeah, we're very interested in doing the Citizens Academies too.
Okay, so let us all know so we can get some of our, the people in our wards, in that class. And I know when I went through it, it was limited, it was only maybe, I don't even think 20 people. So if those, groups can be as big as 50, that's even better, because more people can get involved.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's it, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next on the queue is Alder Furlow and then Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief, again for your very thorough presentation. I just have a question regarding our animal shelter. We're putting a substantial amount of money into that. Were we going to do a combination or with another city? Did that fall through?
No, we had a meeting with the mayor of Hamden and the police chief of Hamden and some other officials, and our mayor and me and a couple other people. The spirit of the meeting seemed to be like they would just use some cages, and we felt like that wasn't what the original concept was. It was to like share the responsibility, share everything in total. You know, obviously we would have more animals than them, but it wasn't just to kind of rent a couple cages. So we talked further about that. We have another meeting coming up soon. So there is still a proposal on the table, but I don't think it's in our best interest to just kind of sustain a full shelter so they can have a couple cages. So I want buy-in, the mayor wants buy-in from them, and we're gonna have a couple more meetings and see where that goes.
Great, and just one more question if I may, Mr. Chair. Almost 1,000, I've been to the shelter. Where in the world are you fitting 1,000 animals at? But I'm just wondering.
No, 1,000 animal complaints, so calls for service over the year.
Okay.
No, Dave, we're gonna be your house.
We're gonna put them in the car.
That's 6 cats in the backyard. But my final question is, Chief, does the animal shelter euthanize?
Yes, it does. There's a set of guidelines, there's a set of rules that they follow. Just like if you brought a dog to the vet and they said it's gonna cost $30,000 to remove the dog's cancer, or you put the dog down, it's very similar to that. It's very caring, it's very conscious about money spent versus how sick the animal is, you know. And we have two nonprofit groups that help us, the Friends and then the Humane Society. Both groups kind of overwatch that as well. And they have monies that help us pay for things. So it's kind of like a three-pronged system there, and but we do euthanize under certain situations.
And the reason why I asked, and thank you for that, the reason why I'm asking is I'm wondering if that is part of the veterinary cost.
Yes, it is. The vet, I want to be clear on that. We don't use, the police officers don't euthanize the animals unless it's an emergency, say a deer was struck on the roadway or something, but most of the euthanization is through the vet.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Alder Festa, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some questions regarding the 1 lieutenant, 3 sergeants, and 3 detectives. How will, obviously some of these positions are gonna be taken off the beat. So how will that affect the way we conduct business, or will they?
Yes, that's a good question. So when I make someone a detective, yeah, they come off the beat. So these positions are for this budgeted year, but like on July 1st, I'm not gonna make those positions. You know, I'm gonna wait until we get some more people. I would say I'm anticipating hopefully November, December, if the recruiting goes the way I'm hoping it's going. You know, we had a snafu recently where we were gonna put 16 into a concurrent academy in our own building. But we didn't have 16 ready to go in time for post to approve it. So we sent 6 to Hartford and we're sending another 9 to 2 other academies. So I'm still getting 15, but so we run into those issues, right? But I would say in the plan in my head that by November, December, where the weather changes and you don't have as many walking beats, I could at that point make those positions as more officers are coming down to the spring as well.
Except the new officers will still be in training, right? Because they have to do their academy and then.
Yeah, so if I get, so all the officers that are training now, so I have 6 that just went to Hartford. I had 7 that just came out of Waterbury. I have 2 more coming out next week. And then I have 19 in the academy. They get out in the end of May, and they'll be on their own by the end of August. So that's going to be when they are on their own, that means the 7, the 2, and the 19 are all on their own. So probably even closer to September or October, because that's going to be a huge thing of resources into the street.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. Everything takes from something else, correct? So we're weighing risk versus reward and saying, are these 3 detectives gonna make arrests for violent crime and help lower violent crime? Are they gonna take away from a beat that I really need? I weigh it. I'm awake at night because of those questions, right? But I would say that sometime after September, we're gonna have an infusion of over 30 officers that are new onto the street. I'll be able to use them and pull a couple off.
So I guess we'll be seeing you again with more details to come. Because I mean, obviously, we're already complaining that we don't have enough officers out there now. With and don't get me wrong, everyone deserves to be promoted. I think that helps with building morale as well. But you know, at the same time, we need to make sure the residents are
absolutely
well. The districts are covered. Put it that way.
And I have to be. I just thought of this. We don't have a current sergeants list too, which we'll probably test in the fall. So that won't be ready till, you know, it'll be the second half of the budget year where we're looking at sergeants. Well, the first thing we would probably do is the detectives, because I do have an active list. So everything kind of has a piece.
And then, you know, regarding the 3 civilian positions, what vacancies do we currently have for civilians?
We have a few, I think.
And how long have they been vacant?
So one of the analysts, we hired somebody, he stayed for about 8 or 9 months and then he left. So that's been vacant for a little while. Okay. So, do they have this?
No.
Oh, okay. So all total in vacant positions for civilian, I have 11 vacancies, and I'll go down the list just so you see. Two in records clerk, 2 in records clerk 2, 1 in quartermaster, 1 in police mechanic, 1 in crime analyst, 1 in body worn camera assistant, 1 assistant animal control, and 1 account clerk, 2 account clerk. I think that's it. So differing positions. I think with the infusion of the new Intel Center, we'll get, you know, we also try to recruit from UNH, not just for officers, but also analysts. That's a great job coming out of college. You have a criminal justice degree. We're hoping we can get them into an entry-level position. And the younger kids in a new position are going to work hard for you, you know. So there is some positions I have to fill, which is your question. But I think we can do it. And the unfortunate attention of the animal shelter has had people call us saying we'd be interested in helping. Like everybody wants to help with the animals, so I know we'll be able to fill those.
So the two new assistant animal control officers, as well as one of the civilian vacancies, did I hear?
Yeah, so there'll be three. We'll be hiring three.
So, okay, I mean, how long has the other vacancy been vacant?
I think it's only been a few months. We hired somebody who was.
If
even
you're gonna
temping the
speak,
shop.
please make sure that you're speaking so everyone can hear.
I'm sorry. It's only been a few months. We had someone we hired temp pending testing. He actually was able to get the permanent position and just left for another job. And it's I mean, I know from talking to the animal shelter personnel and experiencing, I think they felt like they were short there already. So they've been definitely eager to fill this. Our lists have been very short. So when he left, we would have normally liked to fill that immediately after, but we just didn't have the list. So they're working on that right now. And she's optimistic that we'll get a lot more candidates this time around.
And how about the other, is that the same for the other vacancies then?
Records clerks, they fill pretty quickly. You know, people move around the city in positions, but I think it's that testing process, you know, that we have to get a list. So I don't think, do we have a records clerk list coming?
I think they probably are very close to having a record
Make sure you
clerk
give
too.
your answer so that everyone can hear you.
Sorry, I think we're close to getting a record clerk 2 list, which our record clerk 1s will promote into. And then after that, we'll probably do record clerk 1, but we are down, especially with, I think when we get the new CAD, there's some concerns that they want to make sure that they have that full staff that they're up to so that they can implement that technology.
So it sounds like the testing is part of the problem where we don't have a running list.
So again, I think part of the issue is we talked about this at other meetings and human resources will be here, I think, tomorrow with the CAO's office, but we've talked about the testing process and just the overall number of vacancies that the city has. And that certainly does play a part in some of these positions being vacant at the moment. Some have only been vacant for a couple of months, along with the limited staff and HR and trying to get the civil service process done. So yes, testing is playing a vacancy. I think also in analyzing the budget and the needs of what the chief needs, looking at the vacancies versus the new positions is not really a one-to-one ratio. When you look at, could you eliminate a records clerk or the crime analyst or something like that? At the end of the day, the work has to get done, right? The work's getting done right now with these vacancies, but again, as we talked, the departments would certainly love the body because it's double the work on some of the employees, so on and so forth. So,
and just to add, so we have 21 positions for records clerk, and we have 17 of them filled. So we're doing pretty well there. You know, I know we'll fill those once we get the list, and that's why you raise a great point. The lists are tough, but in the police officer side, we're doing it differently now. We're having ongoing recruitment where we can test when we get the numbers. We have open recruitment, excuse me. So this is going to help us fill those positions better. And maybe it's something, if it works out for us, we can pass it to HR to do for the civilian positions as well.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, because I think it's important to mention that we do civilian testing, and if we don't have a recurring list, these vacancies are going to stay vacant.
Yeah.
And if I may, I do have other questions, but just one more for now, and then I'll yield to. Is there anything in the budget for expansion of ShotSpotter?
No, we just completed that project. So all the expansion of ShotSpotter that was probably about a year to expand it has been completed.
And I only ask because there are areas of the city that do not have ShotSpotter, and there are many residents that are under the impression that the whole city is under ShotSpotter, and it is not. So people are not calling 911 when they're hearing what could be shots and what are shots. And I've had these conversations with residents just today, as well as 2 weeks ago. And so we have a little bit of a problem there.
No, that's a great point. And, now that the full expansion is done, I'm willing to put maps together, go to CMTs, do community meetings, whatever you think would be appropriate for any of your wards, and kind of roll that out and tell people where ShotSpotter is and where it isn't.
Yes, because it did come up on Monday night CMT in East Rock, but there were also 50 shell casings that were found in Cedar Hill, and no one called the police. And I spoke to some residents, and I don't know if they're just getting immune to it, but they thought that ShotSpotter existed, but it stops actually on Dover and Fairhaven, so it does not expand over. But that call was not made until the day after, so it is a concern and something that needs to be looked into, so.
The other thing ShotSpotter asked us, and they do a comparison of where all the shots are being located. If there's an area of the city that's not having some and we're covering it, we could push something over. So I'm gonna talk to them about that, because we are investing money into this program, right? So they should be doing what we want. So I'll look at that as well. I'm pretty sure most of the coverage is in areas where we need it, but if there's an area that we don't, we can move it over at the same cost. We could look at that as well, because I know the exact incident you're talking about, and I'm concerned about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. And I think I'll just remind colleagues that it was an ARPA allocation that helped to provide for the expansion of ShotSpotter into some more areas. And seems like an update on that process is probably a useful thing that maybe perhaps our Public Safety Committee might take on going forward. Next on the queue is Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Chief, new officers coming on board. Is there a plan in place to retain these officers? In years of past, New Haven spent a lot of money training new officers. They get good training, and 6 months down the road, boom, they're gone to another town because they're getting more money, different, better benefits probably. But, we've spent the money to train them, and we've lost that officer. Is there a plan in place that to mentor and, something that will keep our officers that we spent money to train?
Yeah, we're just discussing, when I came on, that's a great question. When I came on in July, I talked about mentorship. Haven't rolled it out yet, but that's my next phase. And in that mentorship, it would be these officers spend 2 weeks in the homicide, in the cold case homicide, 2 weeks in major crimes, 2 weeks in special victims, 2 weeks in the traffic unit, just so they could see what we have before they make a decision to leave. We've had 8 officers leave since December, but I'm happy to announce 2 are talking about coming back. They went, so grass wasn't greener. And they're actually talking about coming back, and I'm gonna do everything possible to bring them back, because they were good officers. If they left and they weren't, they're not coming back. But that's a great question. There's nothing that keeps them more than a contract. I know I was here a week ago and I said that, and I don't want to say it too often, but a contract would help. But I'm telling you, people have left. One female officer went to Naugatuck. They paid $92,000, where we paid $78,000. And she's talking about coming back because it's not the same police experience. It's not the same department. So I think it's important that we do the mentorship, but we also continue to expand and do what we have to do. By making promotions, by getting technology. I talked about the Star Chase and the stop sticks. It's very frustrating as an officer, especially if you pull over a lot of cars, or you're trying to stop violent crime, or you're trying to get a guy with a gun, and the guy takes off, and we have to tell you, you can't chase him, it's too dangerous. Because it is, and it's the right call as the bosses. But we provided technology that gives them a chance, and they love it. It's been a morale boost the last couple of weeks. They're showing me videos. Hey, look, we shot that car. It went to Worcester Square, and we crept up on the guy, and he was pulling the thing off his license plate and pulled his whole license plate off, and then we grabbed him, and he had all these drugs and guns on him. So it's about building an atmosphere where we can do our job, we can do it safely, but they need to know, like I always say to them about the community needs to know you care. Well, the cops need to know that I care and the rest of you care. And I think we're creating that. I think we're getting to a better place. We're purchasing things that are going to help them. The cameras are hugely helpful. It's so almost demoralizing for a detective to not have any tools to do their job and seeing people shot a lot, right? And these guys are like so excited that they're making these arrests, that they're able to tell these families we found justice. And that's a wave. We got to ride that wave and keep going in the right direction. And I would say that's one of the most important things.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further questions from colleagues of our city staff on the issue of the police services? Further questions from colleagues about the proposed budget for police services for next fiscal year? I'm gonna say just a couple quick things. I don't know that there are gonna be long questions. The first is that there's just a discrepancy in the paperwork we have between what the current state of staffing in the department is and what it says in your presentation. Our paperwork says it's 448 positions, your paperwork says it's 449. So that's just a little reconciliation that we gotta attend to. You know, it's only one position off, but I thought you were adding 11 positions, or 10, so I got a little confused about that. And also I just, so that's something maybe that we can work out with Mr. Gorman after the meeting. I want to repeat the request that we made in the previous meeting to have further comparative data in regards to the executive salaries. Right, there's a whole list of executive level positions in the city that are proposed to be increased significantly. What we have been told is that we need to do that in order to be competitive with comparable cities in the state. I'm sure that's true, but we would like to see that in black and white, what those comparative salaries are. And so I would repeat that request. And then the last one I would just say is that's a whopping overtime figure. I think you've probably talked a lot about that in the item that I missed this evening, since I had another meeting so I'm not going to ask you to go over that again. I suspect you talked about that in the earlier item. But I just wanted to say for the record that, boy, that's a whopping number. And I understand that the goal is to recruit more officers and to see that figure go down because you have more boots on the ground. But that's been an item of a lot of concern for this committee and this board for the decade that I've been on the board. And it would be remiss if I didn't just say that, boy, that's a whopping figure. We would like to see that change in the future. So those are just 3 comments that I would make rather than posing questions.
Oh, I just wanted to add, I had laid out a philosophy, to say the least, about pushing the overtime responsibility down to sergeants and lieutenants, and that unit supervisors and district managers got budgets themselves. That never happened in this police department in 17 years. So the thought is that when they go over the budget, they have to answer to me and my chiefs and explain why they're over the budget. And then if the system works like I want it to work, even the district 5 district manager might give the district 6 district manager some of their money because they're not having as many issues or whatever. So my theory is to keep the entire command staff thinking about overtime and thinking about cost versus reward, where we never had that in the past. So I do have a plan, but it also is contingent on getting those spots up first.
Thank you, Chief. Any last questions of Alder Douglas?
Just a comment.
Make sure
No, I
you
do have a question.
make sure you use the microphone, sir, so that everybody in the chambers can hear you.
So, just recently, we had a string of car thefts. And you said that there's money in the budget that was used by some of the district managers. Tyson, all the Walker-Myers, I'm sorry. Those, the steering wheel lights, did that come from?
Yeah, the club.
Okay, the club. Yeah. Did that come from the district
No,
manager?
no, that was donated by the car agencies. So the district manager recognized the problem, recognized the type of car, and went to the car places, basically saying, how do I stop this? And they said, use these, and they donated, which was great. That's thinking, I want a little bit of this money to stimulate the district managers, but I want them to go do that type of stuff too, because they're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, comment?
Alder Singh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, you spoke about training and traffic officer with car seat, baby car seat. It's great to do that project, but the one that would get stopped without a car seat, I think those are the ones that needs a car seat. So, so in thinking about rolling out a program that, car seats, if you're gonna distribute any, it's about that ticket in time that one gets stopped, that needs a car seat.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. We'll make sure that if we do roll that out, that we have them in the back of some of the traffic units cruisers, so when they do stop people, they'll have that available. I know that if we do stop somebody and that happens, we make arrangements to have that person picked up with somebody with a car seat, but even better, if we could give them one, that'd be great. Great idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Seeing no further questions from colleagues, we will thank you for your presentation, your presentations this evening, and we'll move forward in our agenda this evening to the fire department, which is next.
And thank you very much for letting me go first. That never happens. So I appreciate it. But I also appreciate the questions and the thoughtfulness. And every time I come in front of you, I learn something new. So we all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I believe we may have a bigger group coming to the table, so we have an extra chair, which might allow colleagues to create a little bit more space over here for folks. Thank you, colleagues, for making space. We might be able to make it work without adding chairs. I think we will make it work without adding chairs. Just give us a moment. Good evening. Once you're settled, we'll have your names and addresses for the record, please. And I believe we have your presentation. This is correct. So when you're going through the presentation, just be sure to tell us what page you're on so we can follow along. So.
John Alston, Fire Chief, City of New Haven, 952 Grand Avenue.
Daniel Kaufman, Assistant Chief of Operations, 75 Warren Street, New Haven.
Assistant Chief Justin McCarthy, 952 Grand Avenue, New Haven.
Michael Gormley, City Acting Controller, 45 Jefferson Road, Brentford.
Gina Reshkittle, CAO, 2 Front Street, New Haven, Connecticut.
The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I think we might follow the format we did before, with you introducing the budget, if you don't mind, and then I can address the particular street department. Thank you for allowing us to present this evening.
All right, thank you, everyone. Sorry, just pulling it up. All right, so we are here to present the mayor's proposed budget overview for New Haven Fire Services for fiscal year 23-24. Looking at page 2 of the PowerPoint deck, you'll see a majority of the fire services budget is general fund. The budget is increasing by $2.3 million for going into fiscal year 23-24. Moving on to slide number 3 is just the overall general breakdown of the department. As you can see, almost 76% of their budget is personnel, with the other major percentage being overtime, which increased to $5.3 million from fiscal year 2023 to 2024. Going on to the next slide, page 4. The fire department currently has a contract which includes a general wage increase of 2% going in from fiscal year 23 to 24, which is included in the mayor's proposed budget. We did increase the overtime, which we will get into in a few slides. And again, as per past MOU, the city did add 3 captains and 1 lieutenant position within the mayor's proposed budget for fiscal year 24. moving on to the next slide, which really talks about the non-personnel changes in the fire department. There were really only two non-personnel changes, which was an increase to fire maintenance agreements and an increase in vehicle supplies related to the department. And I will move on to slide number 6, which shows the staffing highlights, and I will let the chief go into this particular takeover from here.
Thank you, and good evening to the alders and to the public. This will be the 7th budget presentation, well, actually 6. I had COVID last year. Chief McCarthy was able to do the presentation for me. Before I begin, I just wanted to publicly acknowledge the contributions and work he's done for the city of New Haven. As many of you know, he will be retiring from us in the next month, but he has been a dedicated public servant, friend, confidant, and an amazing, amazing human being. With the years, the couple of years at the fire department, New Haven Fire Department has had some difficult years, and we couldn't have gotten through it. I know I couldn't without him. And to my left is the newly appointed Assistant Chief of Operations, Daniel Kaufman. You're going to be seeing a lot of him. He's hit the ground running. He's been a sponge, absorbing, but he was already a fantastic officer, trainer, and battalion chief, and now he's taken on the mantle of Assistant Chief of Operations. And one of the first things he tackled were the hydrants, which I can greatly appreciate. I also want to thank my boss, the Chief Administrative Officer, Regina Rush-Kittle, because what you don't know is that every Thursday or even Friday at 10 o'clock, we run our budget and we meet and we look to see where every penny is going, not just in staffing, but expenses, overtime, and the like, to see how we can address them. One of the principal drivers for our overtime is staffing, the lack of having current lists. And I know I say that every year that I'm in front of you. As of today, this will be the first year that we will have testing for every position in our department except one. So those vacancies that we had with the 10 captains, we couldn't promote the captains until we had a list. We were going to lose the list that's subsequent to that list, which was the lieutenant's list. That was going to die February 23rd. So working through the CAO's office, getting HR to get the testing done, we were able to get the captain's list done. So we promoted the 10 captains. That gave us 15 vacancies in the lieutenant's rank because we also had the test for the assistant drill master and drill master. So as we have those current lists, our costs go down. We're already on track, we're back on track to have the director of training, deputy chief, lieutenant, and all 4 positions in the fire marshal's office, the acting deputy fire marshal, the public safety assembly. What happens when you have those vacancies, you have to create actors. And so then that generates overtime. One of the things that we're looking at as well in staffing are paramedics. So as folks are promoted out of a position from private to an officer, they're no longer an active paramedic for the city of New Haven. Also, by contract, after 10 years, they don't have to keep their credentials. So not only do we have people retiring out of the paramedic rank, we have people promoted out of the paramedic rank, but we also have people who are just dropping their credentials. And so we have to hire those same people back. So that concerns me as a chief, that we already have people who are carrying the brunt of our service because 84% of our service is medical. We're looking at ways through the technology, through the way calls are taken, how they're assigned, to reduce those calls. But we also have to be concerned about their mental health and fatigue. So one of the things that you will see in the future that we proposed is a lateral transfer for paramedics. It is on the drawing board right now. It is not there, but that is similar to what the police department has done and will be similar to an open enrollment with a reduced time in the academy. They will already come with us pre-credentialed. They'll go through a modified academy with us, and we will be able to staff those positions and again reduce the overtime. So back to the slide. We are testing within the next 30 days, deputy fire marshal, director of training, deputy chief, and lieutenant. We've made the other promotions to assistant chiefs and assistant chief battalions, captains, lieutenants, and so on. The only list that we will have open is the firefighter rank, which at that point, what we start to see that's driving the overtime there is that we have a generation of firefighters who understand the importance of work and life balance. And so when you have to order them into work, or there's an opportunity for them to work overtime, they'll turn it down. By them turning it down, the senior members are taking it. And so with those vacancies, the more times we use the senior members to work, it triggers the FSLA. So now they're working more than 212 hours in a 28-day period, it triggers the time and a half. So if we look at it globally, as we staff, as we hire, as we promote, our personnel costs will go down. We have on the civilian side a special mechanic. It is very tough to keep mechanics these days. One, in the private sector, they make more money. Let's face it, they can set pretty much their own hours. But there was an issue when we were hiring mechanics. For a while, the city had a mandatory vaccination policy. And I heard from people that are in the industry that was a turnoff for them. They were also in the process of negotiating their contract. So the benefits and the salaries were not in flux, but they weren't pinned down. Those two items have been gone. And so now we looked at that those positions have been posted. We looked that we were going to be able to hire them. The other thing that happens in that position is that they have mandatory certifications. So you're not just a mechanic. You have to be certified as an emergency vehicle technician. In other words, you have to know hydraulics, not just how transmissions and engines run. And so that is a specialized field. We also lost one of them with Carl to the police department, who was a tremendous mechanic for us. He was phenomenal, and he's got it. We're soon going to be losing an assistant drill master to another town, and I don't blame him. It's an excellent opportunity for him. It's well deserved and well earned. And so what we do every week is we look at our numbers. What's driving them? Does it mean that we have to move people? Does it mean that we have to promote people and test? Moving on to the next slide. I don't have my glasses. Is that 7? That's 7 to me. Oh, thank you. See, youth is wasted on the young. The equipment purchase. We have specialized equipment that we're purchasing that will allow us to, as people start to fortify their homes, obviously in these days, it not only keeps the violent criminal out, if you will, the unwanted folks, but when they have emergencies, it keeps us out too. And we need to be able to access them and have that readily available, not only the tools and equipment, but also the training. We rolled out our new SCBAs that were purchased through a FEMA grant, but we also have software that now will tell us when a firefighter is low on air. Obviously, you know the tragedy that we faced 2 years ago. We didn't have access to that technology at the time, but not through our own funding, but through grant writing, significant grant writing through Rick Fontana's office and with the aid of the CAO's office, we were able to secure that type of funding for that technology, as the chief of police talked about earlier. So that allows us to track our firefighters too. But we also have software that's called Roll Call. In the past, we would pay for grievances if a firefighter was skipped for overtime, or if a firefighter was hired for overtime and they came in, but now that firefighter that they were hired for was on sick and they came back and now they're ready to go on duty to work, we still had to pay that firefighter a minimum of 4 hours. With the roll call software, we not only have the union rules applied to the application, but if we need a firefighter to work, multiple text messages are sent out, and we have is it will call, or it's like going to the theater, but
Yeah, we'll call.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the easiest way.
they let us know they're available and ready to work, and we can cancel them also in a timely manner. If I missed any budgets, let me know, any bullets. We took delivery of line command vehicles and paramedic vehicles as of yesterday afternoon or this afternoon?
Yesterday afternoon.
Yesterday afternoon, all of our frontline paramedic wagons are brand new pieces of equipment. They bear the brunt of the calls that we're going on. And what we've done now is that we have viable spares for them as well. I'll go to the next slide. Good luck. Sorry, I'm going to do this. I just just have to stretch that out. So when it came to the training of our members, a number of our members have attended Connecticut Fire Academy. Many of them, we have a training for them. I don't think I've denied anyone training other than if it weren't their responsibility. Like maybe they requested training that was out of their job specification. But one of the things that we put on the training form is how is it going to benefit the city of New Haven? And would you be willing to teach at the academy? First time I learned my lesson, we got a lot of people trained as instructors. Then they didn't go to the academy and train, and I couldn't force them to. Learn that. So now if you want us to send you for certification for instructor, you have to commit that you will give at least 6 months at our discretion at the academy. You know what's happened? People want to teach at the academy. We just promoted a young lady. We hired her 5 years ago. She became a certified driver, and now she's an assistant drill master. So the people that we're recruiting and bringing in are giving back to the department and the city. And we're starting to see that when we lost a lot of our members, not only through their retirement, but going into different job positions, we wondered how we would backfill these positions. We're starting to see young people requesting training that I know, through my experience, is going to benefit this city for the next 10 to 15 years. They're doing it in the first 4 to 5 years of their career. And I'm excited about that, and they are too. We have a new CPR instructor course. Before we were outsourcing CPR, having them come and teach us. We now have the instructors down at the school that will run classes for ourselves, for us. We had the Connecticut State required traffic incident management course. Everyone had to learn how to operate in a traffic scene, high speed, highway, and roadways. Recently, one of our trucks, I know you got the email from me earlier today. Recently, one of our trucks was damaged severely by a speeding driver not paying attention and hit our truck, sending 2 of our members to the hospital and possibly could have killed the others had that truck not been there. But that's the type of training that truck. We wanted to be a fire truck, but it was the barrier that we needed to protect our members while they're working. And that training just recently happened in the last 2 months, I believe. So it's working. We use an acquired structure. I know Alder Walker Myers remembers we were making a lot of noise, but doing realistic training, learning how to save our own, and utilizing an acquired structure without having to burn it, but giving them that real street and real life experience is incredible. We updated our elevator education training, and all members are training in the preservation of evidence. Our arson squad is locking people up. They're making arrests. They're catching people that are setting intentional fires. We've also had advanced victim removing training that was conducted by the entire department. We purchased 8 modems necessary to upgrade our life packs. So basically, the life packs that we bought in the past, you've seen them when they hook up the leads and they run the strip. Well, the requirements now are that they have air cards, cell cards, so that they transmit the data in real time. Bless you. They transmit the data in real time. It used to be that you either removed the card at the hospital or plugged in and downloaded it onto a laptop. Now it transmits that data in real time. Through our management and policy analysts, we've developed a detailed data sheet that goes out every Tuesday that analyzes and gets granular on our calls. I know that Chief Carl Jacobson, you gotta excuse me, I'll be 63 this year. I'm starting to hit dead spots. Chief Carl Jacobson, and then stand by for the Chief Carl Jacobson, got it, was talking about a study for our services to see what our staffing and deliveries would be. I know that the board proposed monies for that, but it was only $70,000. And I don't say it like that's a small amount of money, it's still a significant amount of money, but the $70,000 was to pay for 2 departments. We were getting quotes just for the fire department at $95,000 for a study. So now we have a management and policy analyst where I can pose those questions that we would normally ask a consultant to do to get granular on the types of calls, how much time we're spending there, how many people we're sitting there, and even the use of the equipment. And some of the stuff we've been sending to the CAOs over probably the last quarter, this is the first quarter we've had it in. It's showing significant information, really significant information. And We're now working on a public portal that you'll be able to go onto the website and see what we do, the types of calls that we have and how long we're there. We're currently onboarding a new software system. It's called First Do. We've been using Firehouse forever. That also will give us a tremendous amount of granular data. There is a spelling mistake, upgrades, and I missed it, upgrades to it's the SCBA, it should be Air Managing System. And that's what I talked to you about earlier, before, that allows us to, when the firefighters turn their packs on, their name, their designation, their pack comes on, and we literally can see how much air they have in their tank. We're able to hit a button and evacuate them, even before they think they can evacuate themselves, that they want to evacuate themselves. All right. What we try to do with our challenges and initiatives is we want to follow your legislative agenda. We wanted to look at what you want the city to look like, with jobs, with public community resiliency, with public safety for all. We wanted to make sure that not only were we following our standards and our mission, but we wanted to align it with the Alder's mission, because we want you to see where your dollars are going, that we hear you too when you're talking. We wanted to make sure that we did that. So in that, we're addressing community risk reduction. A bunch of us go out at least once a week. We visit community centers. I go to the Q House just about every Wednesday except for today, and hang with the seniors and talk to them to hear what our citizens are saying, because everyone won't pick up the phone and call the chief. They'll call you, but they won't call us. So we wanted to get out and get into the community. We've done that several times, reading to the children and the like. We want to reduce the number of fires through public fire education, and that means meeting people where they are. It's great for us to print these little cards up and things like that, but we want to start producing videos. We did that over the holidays last year with Chief McCarthy as our star, talking about holiday safety, because people will watch a 1 minute or 2 minute video as opposed to picking up one of those flyers and reading the information in real time. And it also allows them to identify us by our faces. We're purchasing additional fire equipment with the ARPA fund. 3 years ago, we purchased 3 fire engines for a price of just under $2 million, $1.8 million. In fact, friends of mine from across the country wanted to know, how do we work a deal like that? Because at that time, we were paying less than $700,000. They were paying $750,000. It was how we wrote the spec and the relationship we had with communities, and writing the bid spec where people will come to our numbers. Now, after COVID, now after supply chain issues, normally we would see an increase 8.5%, maybe 10% per year in equipment and resources, and that's vehicles. We were told the other day 10% per quarter. So we bought 3 engines for just under $2 million. Now, 1 engine is over $1 million, where we paid almost $650,000 3 years ago. The time it takes to build them, where it used to be 18 months, they are projecting now 800 days. So we did the contract. Mr. Gormany works some magic. We were able to do the contract literally today. The date of delivery, with the signed contract today, is October of 2026. So what do we do in the interim? We have to maintain the fleet that we have. Well, how do you maintain the fleet? We have to make sure that we have certified mechanics. If we don't have certified mechanics, that's why you got that email today. When we saw that build date, I have to have a spare truck. There's no other way to make sure that we maintain the level of protection and safety for us. There's some facility issues. I would like, if you would, do you want to take over as your last official budget presentation, and then I'll work the questions?
Sure. It's good to be back, and thank you all for the opportunity. Our buildings are obviously very old. A lot of them were built in the 60s with a low maintenance model. Unfortunately, it was a no maintenance, and now we're coming into a lot of required maintenance. So a couple of the things that we've been doing is updating and working with Giovanni Zinn and his folks in engineering, a lot of the heating and cooling systems, and trying to make them more efficient, allow for redundant systems. So if we do lose heat in an area, we have heat throughout the building that can be parsed off so that we're not losing a firehouse. Traditional systems weren't like that, and when we lost heat in a firehouse, we were putting small space heaters and relocating firefighters. We've done that in several firehouses. We're also doing quite a large LED conversion for anything that's remaining that isn't LED to try to reduce costs and improve lighting in firehouses that prevents injuries. Obviously, these are 24-hour days, 365-day a year buildings that take a lot of wear and tear. So having updated systems, we're also looking at windows and doors in some of the firehouses where we're finding our worst drafts, updating those, trying to insulate them better, and just overall look at quality of life in the firehouses and ensure that the firefighters who spend a third of their life there are as comfortable as could be while they're at work. So that's very important for us. The next point on here is to continue to apply for and secure all applicable opportunities. We've met with Rick Fontana. We've met with people from FEMA regarding high priority issues that are coming up at the federal level that we have grant opportunities for. One of the big ones right now is the diesel exhausts. There's fire trucks starting and stopping constantly in the firehouses. These are our living quarters. We have systems to essentially take that exhaust outside of the building. Those systems are 15 plus years old. We've applied for a grant to replace them and do that in all 10 firehouses and our shop. Those systems are great for our firefighters, but as they're starting to show their age with the wear and tear of going in and out all day, we're hopeful that a FEMA grant will help us replace all those. We're also looking at grants for our Marine Rescue Division and any other opportunities that come up for fire prevention, especially. We're looking into those actively as that period's ongoing right now. If we go over to page 10, our management policy analyst, Eric, is doing a phenomenal job. Like the chief said, he's doing weekly runs of all of our calls with very significant granular breakdowns, but he's also doing a staffing model breakdown for all of our members. How much time is utilized doing training, how much time is utilized on calls, and what that looks like compared to national standards so that we can allocate our firefighters properly without burnout. We all know that they're busy and comparatively in the state we're the busiest. We want to make sure that they're treated appropriately and we're not, burning people out too quickly. It's a real thing, and we're working on deployment and structure of how our staffing is right now. We recently, with the CAO, have worked diligently on our rules and regulations. It's an old document. It's got some outdated things. We've updated that. We're in the final stages of putting that to the Board of Fire Commissioners. The union's been very active with helping us, and we think it's a positive document that's going to help the firefighters as a guidance tool throughout their time with the department. We're looking at our technology. As the chief said, we're moving into first due. This is the most current report management system that we have, and records management system that we can have. It works with the fire marshal's office. It works with the firefighters on the line. It's even linking directly to Yale. So as our firefighters go on a medical call now, they can type their EPCR as it's dubbed. Everything gets linked to that, and it goes directly into, obviously most of our patients go to a Yale facility, right into their chart. So the doctor can read that real time and best serve our civilian population that's going to the hospital. As the chief said, roll call has been great for our overtime hiring and staffing. We're moving it into the payroll side, which will track our payroll. We're finalizing that right now with the company and with the payroll division to make sure it talks to Munis. The chief already brought up pre-ordering rolling stock. This is a major concern. Obviously 800 plus days, almost 880 for a ladder truck right now is concerning, and we want to be proactive and get ahead of that problem. And we've been working with our suppression firefighters, our training division, and our fire marshal's division about getting out there in the public. We've been doing things for people of all ages. There's been numerous events that we've been at and we've presented fire safety at. We've done it for children right up through to the high schools, and we are doing quite a few senior citizen public educations right now. We're cooking, exiting the building, protecting in place. And these have been really positively received by the civilians and citizens. And we're really happy to get out there. And we received, I would say in my office, and I work with Chief Coughlin on this, we're probably receiving 3 to 5 requests a week for folks to come out, and we're fulfilling every single one of them. If you go to page 11, our last page, we do have a capital funds request. It is a little bit different this year. Historically, we had 3 categories. We've reduced them to 2. Emergency medical at $500,000. This pays for our medical supplies, our medications that we're required to carry. And I think it's important, we just received word that there's going to be an albuterol shortage. We're working around that. That's a major cost driver, and albuterol is something that our asthma patients utilize. We know in New Haven, asthma is a very prevalent medical concern. And so this is very concerning. We're trying to be proactive with this, but it's costly, as is the purchase of Narcan, which we know is a valuable tool, but as it becomes more open to the public, it's driving our costs differently because of just supply chain.
And if I can touch on the emergency medical as well. We're required by the state to carry certain medications, and also new medications come out that have the same therapeutic results as maybe one medication. There may be 2 that they have to take now because of a shortage of another. So we're constantly, we meet almost weekly with Yale and also with the service chiefs, the chiefs in this area, to discuss better ways of treating patients when we have those types of shortages, and trying to get ahead of it. And also one of the things that's going to be in there is the, not the Pyxis machine, but the
Lucas?
Yeah.
So the Lucas device you'll see on here is a CPR device. It's worked out phenomenally. Ours are coming up on their age of life, their valuable use of life. We do need to replace those. And what these are is a device that performs the chest compressions during CPR that is within exactly what the standard is. Once the device goes on, it's increasing survivability during cardiac arrest. And today we found out that in the Yale system, which consists of about 20 towns, last year there was 11 cardiac arrest saves, all right? This year, this past 365 days, we had 11 just in New Haven. So
all walking around.
Every single person was discharged. So there is proof positive that these devices and these medications are working. For rescue and safety, we consolidated our rescue and safety and our PPE for a total of $950,000. This is going to help us with vehicle extrication, equipment that needs to be upgraded and replaced, repaired, update our fire service PPE. We know PPE costs are going through the roof. We're seeing 18 to 20% increases in the cost of PPE. It lasts for us anywhere from 5 to 7 years, and that is replaced. We downgrade and give them their set to maintain as a spare, but it does need to be replaced every 5 to 7 years. That's what this fund will be used for, as well as for any new firefighters coming in who have to be outfitted with custom fire protective clothing. We want to purchase new electric ventilation fans. The current fans that we're using are at the end of their life. They're between 15 and 20 years old. They've done their job for the city, but they are in need of replacing, and they are several $1,000s each. And we've recently acquired one rapid intervention extrication device for removing a downed firefighter. We like the outcome that it is produced, and we would like to put more of them in the field. So that is a focus of ours this year, to purchase additional rapid intervention devices to assist our firefighters. I think that's it. And I'll turn it back over to the chief and Mr. Gormany. And
one thing that I wanted to mention when I talked about Chief Coughlin coming on and tackling the hydrant piece, I'll give you an example. We pay a flat rate for the water and our water usage in the city of New Haven. We pay to Regional Water Authority. We'll get reports of a hydrant leaking all the time. A hydrant's leaking. Usually it's the change in the weather, change of the season. You know, freeze and thaw. It was shut down tight enough for the winter, but now it's warmer. You have to go tighten it down a little more, or vice versa. But we also have hydrants that leak because they're old. It may cost $8,000. I think one of them, once you found, was it cost
$8,800.
$8,800 to replace. Yet there were 2 or 3 other hydrants in the area. So rather than replace it, shut it down. But if I shut down that hydrant in front of your house that you've been looking at for the last 50 years, and you say, am I protected? Is it going to affect my insurance? Then we need to answer you. We need to make sure that the fire marshal comes out and make sure that we have the proper distance in our hydrants, that we have the right equipment in that area, so it does not affect our ISO rating, your safety, and or your comfort. But if we shut it down, we're shutting it down for a reason. We know that we can get to another hydrant in that area. And those are the types of decisions that we want to make, not only through the data, but also having engagement with our citizens, so that they know a leaking hydrant is still a usable hydrant. But if you really want us to fix it, we're gonna have to shut it down and replace it for $8,000. That's $8,000 you could use someplace else. I'll take any other question. That's just one example of total quality management, if you will.
TQM.
Yes, sir. Still working.
As what I've heard it referred to before. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation, and to our CAO, Ms. Kettle. We will now have questions from colleagues for these public servants. In regards to the fire services budget, I see Alder Morrison and then Alder Furlong.
Thank you, Chair. So Chief, just in regards to equipment, I noticed, over the years, you guys have come and talk about different pieces of equipment that is at the end of their life. What does end of life really mean? Because you know how you have end of life, okay, you got about 2 more years left, or end of life, it has to come off tonight, sure, or someone's gonna get hurt.
Sure.
So when you're talking about these different pieces of equipment that are at the end of their life, what kind of time do we have? Because when you say that in order to get a new truck that is made, it's going to take like 5 years to get it, that's very concerning. And so do we wait till end of life, or do we look at our rolling stock to say, okay, this is going to be end of life in 5 years, so we need to start putting the order in now, come to the Board of Alders to ask for all this money, then we're going to sit down and look, but your truck still works. But so we need to I need a more of an understanding of what that end of life looks like, especially since you're finding that you're in these positions of waiting 5 years for one truck.
Okay, it's an excellent question, and thank you for it. So the standards for frontline engines is 10 years. With trucks, it's 15 years. So the fire engine is the shorter truck that's got I'm not trying to talk down anyone, but when you say fire truck, they go.
You're good.
Yeah, okay. So the short truck with the hose that carries the water, that's the fire engine. The fire truck or ladder truck is the longer truck that carries the ladders. So the shorter piece goes, 10 years is the regular standard. It's not a regulation, but it's a consensus standard. It's National Fire Protection Association. The reason why you have to adhere to that, it's a best practice. So if you don't follow the best practice and you keep that truck on the street for 11 years and it fails, then the liability is on you because they told you don't run that truck more than 10 years. All right, so we've been trying to replace those. We're not blaming COVID, but that started an entire literal chain reaction, not only with mechanics and plants closing, not having the workers there, but also getting the supply chains where parts, I remember when we got the 3 engines, they were assembled up to the degree that the axles weren't there. The axles were sitting out on the Pacific coast on a ship that hadn't come in yet. And then once it came in, there was no one to drive the truck from California to Wisconsin to bring it. So we're starting to see supply chain issues that we were never affected by before, not only technicians and workers. So to get ahead of that, we've put together a proposal with the ARPA money. We requested to replace 2 engines in a truck. That's in the hopper. When it comes to our equipment, the fire gear that we wear, the tanks are hydrostatically tested. After 10 years, you can't wear them. We just replaced those with the grant. Our coats are good for 10 years, unless I go to a fire, maybe we go to a hazardous fire and they become contaminated. Then that gear gets condemned. Some folks go to fires and stay in longer than they should, or they get caught in what we call a flashover, which may singe their coat or degrade the coat, and we may have to take that coat out of service. We test their equipment and inspect it every year. We also don't want to exceed the warranty for that. So that it may not be that the coat is still good, but once we're past the warranty, then the city takes on the repair. Then how do you do a repair that's certified that you can put that coat back onto a firefighter? So it may be better for us just to replace, as Chief McCarthy said, replace that coat, downgrade it, and make it a second set. So now when it gets wet, they're able to dry it and wash it. They're able to use an extractor, which we've gotten a grant for. And so then there's the medical equipment that goes out onto the street, like the life packs, like the Lucas machines, like the AEDs. The AEDs, they're only supposed to last, their battery life is 4 to 5 years. But because we use them so much in the city of New Haven, we're getting 2.5, 3 years out of them. So they have to be replaced at a higher rate. So while we're looking at those things that we're replacing, we've got a lot of all of our vehicles, our entire fleet, what their age is, what their anticipated retirement date is. And then what happens is we've used this pumper for 10 years. Now we can downgrade it to a spare. So we have spares, spare engines. We do not currently have a spare truck. And that's why we push for that purpose.
So going forward, I think it's very important that when you guys come to us, that you bring that list so we understand that, look, we're coming up on end of life, because out of all that stuff that you said, right, I heard a lot of it, but the main thing that I heard, if you go past whatever the warranty is and you continue to use whatever piece of equipment, then the liability comes on the city. And if that's the case, that's going to put us in harm's way financially, because we'll have to continuously like increase taxes, things of that sort. So I think that is very important that as you guys come to us, especially about equipment, that you continuously educate us in regards to all the equipment, so we can get an understanding. Because even if you have a column like, this date, the warranty is over, that's going to help us be able to say, oh, okay, you need this 10 million, I don't know, just throwing a number, $10 million to be able to get all these kind of, I know I would too. but so it, because that 800-day thing really got to me. Like, the price today, we have to wait 800 days to put it out. That's not keeping me safe.
Understood.
Right. Okay. So that's all I wanted to know. Just to what does end of life truly mean, and you did a good job explaining it to me. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Alder Throw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. Let's talk money. All right. Assistant Chief, wish you the best in your future. Thank you so much for all of your service.
Thank you, sir.
And Assistant Chief McCaughlin, welcome to the table.
Thank you.
And I apologize because there's just not enough room on this table for us to bring our books with us. And so we're just kind of tracking things through here. I don't know the number of your total personnel. Okay. If you can, so I'll ask bullet questions and just high level answers, and we'll just bullet through in less than a minute. I think we can go.
Our total budget number, Mr. Roman will bear this out, I believe is 362. I believe we're at 340, 343, somewhere around there. But he'll bear that out.
Okay.
And I do that.
Positions.
Positions, yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm looking at the two other personnel, so I just wanted to get an idea of what that total number is. I don't know what our overtime budget was for last year. You're budgeting 5.3 for this year. And is there an increase of personnel from last year, or are we still that same number?
Same number.
Okay.
So the overtime budget increased by 900,000. So the budgeted number, excuse me,
was 4.4 for this fiscal year, and then you're going to 5.3 for next fiscal year. Again, as we mentioned, the only increase were the 4 positions that we have. For everything else stays the same.
Okay, that makes sense. So Chief, thank you, Mr. Gormley. Chief, if you can tell us about these 3 captain positions?
Yes. Through negotiation with the union, we are required to submit it through the mayor's budget every year for the life of the contract.
Got it. Okay, and my final question, I'm doing good, right? Bulleting record.
Outstanding.
Okay. I like it, high level, keep going. So we have a number of repairs that are needed to our firehouses across the city. And so I think I'll do it like this, through you, Mr. Chair, if we can just get a list, if it's not in our book, a list of the firehouses that need major repair and an estimated cost of those repairs, then that will be helpful. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
So noted.
We just recently did that. We have the list. We don't have the numbers. We'll work on those.
Westfield, please. Thank you.
Indeed. Not only Westville, but definitely Westville. Thank you, Alder Furlow. Next to the queue is Alder Festa, followed by Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chiefs, for your presentation. Regarding the personnel, budgeted personnel, how many are firefighters? And how many vacancies do we have? So you mentioned we're at 340, which means, 362 minus 340, we have 22 vacancies.
I'm going to work off the top of my head. We have 2 deputy chiefs vacancies currently. We have roughly 20 firefighter, 18 to 20 firefighter vacancies. We do not have a director of training. We're testing for that position. We do not have a deputy fire marshal. We're testing for that position. So those in the fire marshal's office will test for that one position. They will all, not all, but there'll be a shift depending on who is successful in that position. And it will either create one other vacancy in that office, but we will have the list to fill it, but that's in the budget already. So there's not an increase in suppression, not an increase at the school, not an increase in the training division. The vacancies currently now in the auto shop are 2 mechanics, which is also a tested position. We're in the process of testing that. Did I miss something?
No, so really, I'm more interested in the number of firefighters positions that are vacant.
Roughly 18 to 20.
18 to 20.
Yeah, we average 25 a year.
Okay, and then out of the firefighters that are, what positions filled, how many are out on leave?
Long-term sick.
I have 3 people who are either going for surgery or recovering from surgery. I have
4 on light duty.
4 on light duty right now, and they're recovering with PT and such for return to work. And
I think anyone on
no on AL, and none on military right now.
Okay, so 7.
Roughly 7 or
That
something. Yeah. We may have one, I was notified that we may have one leaving on military, but we haven't gotten those orders yet.
Okay. Because obviously, not only do the 18 to 20 vacancies hurt, but also anyone who is out on leave, and I actually forgot to ask that question of the PD as well, because we could throw out all these numbers and say, hey, we have 500 firefighters and only 2 vacancies, but then how many of they are actually out on leave? So that affects your overtime budget. And you mentioned that the newer firefighters aren't taking overtime due to life work balance, which I get it, but I guess I remember the days when everyone was rushing to get overtime, so I guess times have changed. And were you referring to the overtime of time and a half to the Garcia? Is that what that?
Correct.
Okay.
I said FSLA, but it's Garcia.
And that is spiking up obviously the overtime budget. Do we have any incentives for those newer firefighters who are declining? I would think that as a newer, younger firefighter, you want to put in as many hours as you can to build up your savings and, whatever else, put money aside, your vacation funding. But I guess I'm from the old school. So are there any incentives to try and encourage they to take the overtime versus us having to?
Sure. If I may, there is a book. It's called The New Kind of Diversity by Dr. Tim Elmore. The difference in the workforce, and it's every occupation. The difference in the workforce is that in years past, in the 5 generations that are in the workplace right now, of the 4 of those 5 generations, they went to work because they were feeding their family, paying a mortgage, had other responsibilities. It's not to say that our newer firefighters don't have the same responsibilities. They have different responsibilities. So the salary is not a necessary life-changing item in their life. It is a means to an end. So we see people that don't go into the profession for 25, 30 years. We see them go 3 to 4 or 5 years in the profession and then go do something else. It's the same thing in our educational institutions. They may go to 3 institutions just to get 1 degree. It is not the same attitude. There's nothing bad about it. But what you're talking about is trying to address it. We're trying to keep them engaged. One thing that I saw that was very, very, very promising, you said the entire academy was in use today. And we didn't direct anybody to go to the academy to train today. We didn't make them go train. They wanted to. So we're starting to see that type of change as well. But you also said this, we need to motivate them and incentivize it. And many times that's not just money. It's giving them an opportunity, giving them an ear that you're listening to them.
And if I may, Alder, with the recent PMA taking over our workers' comp, we have a lot more information with that. And we've averaged 150 claims, and this is full claims, not people going out long-term, any claim of an injury, every fiscal year. We haven't broke 60 yet for this fiscal year. So we're seeing obviously a lot less claims, a lot less injuries, a lot less downtime, and a lot less people not at work.
Well, that shows it's working, right? The system. So that's good to hear. But again, there is that minimum manning, right? That is still in effect.
We enter a contract year next year.
And that also may or may not affect. I know that there was supposed to be a study done. I'm not sure if that was ever completed. Or what the results are or were of that, because that's been a few years in the making, because that too can affect the budget, and I guess it could affect it either way, right? But any word on that?
It was never done because there wasn't enough money.
Well, I remember that, but I thought maybe we would strike a deal or something with somebody, and I thought something was being done.
No, what we did was we established a management policy analyst internally, and those are the numbers that he's generating for us right now, the calls to service and all that.
Okay, I appreciate that, Chief. Welcome, Chief Coughlin.
Thank you.
And you thank you for your time here in New Haven. You'll be back.
My heart is here. 100%.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All set, Alder Festa?
Yes, thank you.
Further questions from colleagues? Alder Wackermeyer, your questions were answered. Okay.
I'll write my paper over. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions from colleagues about the fire department, its proposed budget for next fiscal year? Seeing none, we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
We have one.
Good luck.
We have one more department to hear from this evening. That is the Department of Community Resilience. And so we'll look forward to seeing those folks up front. This is the final departmental presentation of the evening. I see Dr. Bilal. Okay. We bid you come forward, sir. When you are settled, we'll ask you for names and addresses. And then we'll get going. I see that there's paper that needs to come to us. I see that you're
No,
using
this one was not in your packet.
Oh.
This is just a community resilience.
community resilience presentation. We'll give you a moment to turn that up.
If you do have one in your packet, I would replace it.
How many do we have? We have some coming around this way. They're making their way. Names and addresses for the record, please.
Maple Bilal, 115 Lemon Street.
Carlos Sosa Lombardo, 54 Cooper Place, New Haven, Connecticut.
Michael Gormley, 45 Jefferson Road, Connecticut. This. So, this is the Department of Community Resilience, which was created about a year ago with ARPA funding, which primarily funds this department. So what you'll see throughout this budget presentation is kind of get a small overview of the department where it's at now, but from a budgetary perspective, the general fund portion of this budget has not changed. And I'm actually getting ahead of myself. So I will actually let Mr. Sosa Lombardo go through the presentation, and then in a few slides, we'll get to the budgetary information.
Thank you, Mr. Gormley. Good evening, others. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. As we are presenting this, I thought we'll just start out by talking about a little bit about the department or mission. We aim to address complex human services in New Haven, in coordinating various initiatives and resources in the city through our Office of Violence Prevention, our Office of Community Mental Health Initiatives, special projects, and our Office of Housing and Homelessness. We mainly work with interventions that deal with people who are experiencing homelessness, people who use drugs, people who are returning home from incarceration, people who are in crisis due to mental health and substance abuse, people who have been victims of trauma, people who are potential victims or perpetrators of violence as well. Our approach is data-driven coordination of services and service enhancement. We work to divert people from the criminal justice system, make sure that they have supports when they come home from incarceration, make sure that people who are at the highest risk of being involved in community violence have the supports necessary that they need to turn their lives around. And we also have our crisis response team, City Compass, a great collaboration with the police department to make sure that people who suffer mental health and substance abuse and issues due to poverty have access to the resources they need and do not necessarily go to jail or the hospital when they don't need to. We also promote community healing and well-being through various efforts. We make sure that we have services for the homeless, for people who are experiencing homelessness, people who have housing instability. We have an Office of Community Health that provides different trainings. I'll go a little bit more into that. We have the community healing support team that provides support in the wake of traumatic incidents. And we also work around harm reduction in the health department. Now, I'd just like to give a quick update for you others. As Mr. Gormley mentioned, the department was established over the fall of 2021. In January 10, 2022, I was named the department head. Over the winter of 2022, we rolled out our initiative called PRESS that targets the highest risk people in the community, people who are the highest risk of committing violence. We contracted with Yale to launch City Compass. at the beginning of the spring. We also were able to stand up a data dashboard in partnership with the health department and finalize the community engagement to design the blueprint for the Office of Violence Prevention during the spring of 2022. We expanded Connecticut violence intervention programs and street outreach to cover many neighborhoods in the city, neighborhoods that are mostly impacted by violence. We also increased the capacity of the Hope Family Justice Center to provide care coordination for victims of violence. Over the summer, we contracted with the University of New Haven to evaluate the PRESS initiative. We also, over the summer, started with some mental health trainings for community members, providers, and faith-based organizations. In November, we launched City Compass officially. And also over the winter, up until a few weeks ago, we were working on the home therapy allocation plan that the Board of Alders approved. And over the winter, we also extended out our warning centers to make sure that people have safe alternatives during the winter. Some accomplishments and highlights, the Reentry Welcome Center that is supported by my department. During the fiscal year 2022, they supported 333 formerly incarcerated people. As of a few days ago, they are supporting 333 during this fiscal year. 123 people were homeless upon return from incarceration. 95% of them secured housing or temporary housing, while 6 of them refused services. 289 were unemployed, 81% secured employment so far. And we also launched a guaranteed income pilot program for returning residents just a couple of days ago. In terms of violence prevention, our PRESS initiative supported around 80 people who are very high risk in the community, risk of committing serious violence. We also, like I said, expanded VIPs, street outreach to cover neighborhoods such as Fairhaven, Exit 8, Westbrook, Westside, The Hill, and New Hallville. In terms of community mental health, we have performed trainings for service providers, community-based organizations, warming centers, to equip staff to be able to deal with crises and be able to support better people who are suffering with mental health. We have trained so far 266 local residents. We integrated peer support services and the navigation hubs with the philosophy that people who have recovered and gone through the experience are able to connect better with other people who are going through the same experience. We also have a social worker that rotates throughout the Wilson Library, the Fairhaven Library, and the City Library. They have supported 99 residents so far this year, many people who are seeking housing resources and be connected to treatment and employment services. Our crisis response team, City Compass, we have had 346 responses since the program launched this past November. We have ongoing convening of the Community Advisory Board that's formed by 19 residents representing neighborhoods across the city. We are convening also service providers, advocates, and face leaders to make sure that we are getting input and buy-in to enhance the service system. And next week, we are also planning to meet with the business community to understand better their needs and see how we can help each other. We are scaling up operations this summer. We're going to be operating from 8 to midnight. There are going to be 2 teams rotating on 8-hour shifts. And the team will likely be responding directly to certain very low-level calls that are appropriate for the team. In terms of the community healing support team, the team is operated by Clifford peers. They respond in the wake of traumatic incidents such as homicides, shootings, fatal accidents, fire displacement. This year, they have supported more than 550 people so far. And the responses cover, like I said, a range of traumatic incidents such as violence, homicide, violent accident, fire displacement. In terms of homelessness, we have 5 navigation hubs across the city. More than 1,500 people have been supported through those hubs so far this year. Throughout on the warming center side of things, between November and February, we have supported 739 residents so far. In terms of rental assistance and TAP, which supports people who either needs their rental month or security deposit, we have supported 145 people. And we completed our home area relocation plan and submitted it to HUD just a few days ago. And I will pass it on to Mr. Gormani to continue with the presentation.
So that was just a brief overview of sort of some of the highlights and accomplishments of what they've done. Again, as I mentioned, going into slide number 7, from a general fund perspective, the department hasn't changed. When the Department of Community Resilience was created, it kind of broke out 2 divisions of what was in community services: homelessness and crisis response. So going from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24, there is no change in personnel or the amount allocated from general fund. Again, as mentioned in the beginning, part of the reason is the department was created using $8 million of ARPA funding. And during that presentation, when the department was created, that was to supplement some of the initiatives that community services and creating community resilience wanted to do from a homeless, mental health, and crisis response standpoint. So again, no change in the general fund, no change in personnel. The department was created using $8 million to fund us through December of 2026 for this department. So I believe with that, we can take any questions. And just to mention, my apologies, there will be, we did say with the board that we would create an ARPA presentation, which will probably get a little bit slightly more in depth than what you heard here related to the ARPA funding. So with that, Mr. Chair, we'll take any questions.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. And before we move to questions from colleagues, I just wanted to see if I could help clarify something, at least in my mind. If we look at page 2 of your presentation, we see the organizational chart. The director, that's the green base. That's you.
Yes, sir.
And your position is a general fund position.
No, sir.
It's a special fund position.
Yes, sir.
So then, okay, special funds, ARPA funds.
ARPA funds.
The next row of boxes. Yeah. Coordinator Office of Violence Prevention.
Special funds.
ARPA?
Yes.
How many positions?
The ARPA positions are the coordinator for violence prevention, mental health initiatives, and the data GIS manager.
So 3?
Yes.
Okay.
And the harm reduction manager?
No, he was a grant.
I'm going box by box.
Yes. Special projects is general funds.
Who is that? What position is that?
Special projects, the next one.
Okay, so the director of special projects, that's a general fund position.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Coordinator Office of Homeland, we have a general fund position there.
Yes, it's a general fund position.
These other 2 positions are ARPA funded?
Yes, sir. No,
so the coordinator for Office of Homeless is general fund. The 2 that report to that coordinator of housing and homelessness, that's CDBG funds, which is the manager of community development grants, so special funds. And the homeless health outreach coordinator is also special funds. I want to say CDBG and ESG, I believe. So it's a combination of grant funding, but that's special funds as well.
Thank you.
And then the coordinator of mental health initiatives is funded through ARPA. The data GIS manager was funded through the creation of the department with ARPA as well. And the harm reduction manager is
it was a grant that phased out.
I just forgot the name of the grant.
Yeah.
That one was
If it's
also.
phased out, is the position still there?
No, sir, it's not. This is an error here. I apologize for that.
Okay. All right, so that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people are in somewhere in this chart, including you, not including you, sir. And 2 are general fund and the others are special funds. Correct. Either ARPA or CDBG or SESG or something.
Yes.
And now, there's also money that we pay to Clifford Beers, so they won't show up in an org chart, but they're providing services.
Correct.
And any other organization, there's 2, Press, is that also an outside organization?
So yeah, Project More has a contract, to run that program. Yale runs the crisis response team.
Yale being Yale, who?
The consultation center at Yale.
Yeah, so the next
And continuum of care.
There's someone, okay. Yale's a big place. Also different. Clifford Beards, Yale, anybody, the other organization?
Let me see, we have a lot of contracts. I can't.
You have a lot of contracts. All right, so we'll just get the listing later.
Yes.
The point I'm making is that this is a big endeavor with lots of different moving pieces. 2 positions are general fund positions. We've talked about this before in regards to what happens after the ARPA funds are done. So I know folks will ask about that. I don't think we know yet the answer to that question. But there are certain departments here in the city that have many, many special fund positions. LCI is another one. And some folks think, well, there's only 14 positions or something. I'm making it up off the top of my head, when it's in fact twice that many because half of them are special fund positions. So you would think just by looking at the summary, oh, it's 2 positions, it's not much of a department, but in fact, it's a big department with lots of things going, not a big department compared to public safety, for example, but it's bigger than 2 positions. It's just funded through a different mechanism at this point. Okay, I guess we've made that point now. Having done that, questions from colleagues about the proposed budget for these 2 general fund positions and other expenditures for community resilience. Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. And thank you for hanging out with us tonight. I'm just wondering, and it is budgetary. So the numbers here are 550 people supported by the team addressing community trauma, but you're going to bump it up from 8 a.m. to midnight. These people are directed to call what number for help?
I'm sorry, sir, those are 2 different programs. The one at the top is the MC Campus program, which is our team that is dispatched in collaboration with the police department. That program had 346 responses so far. And over the summer, they're going to be scaling up from 8 to midnight. And the community healing support team, which is another team, a team operated by Clifford Beards, they respond to a way of primary incidents like violence, homicide, shootings.
Okay, so then I'll separate the question. 300 or 400 people that are going to be, that are working under the Compass, what number are they calling for support?
So for Compass, the public can access the service right now through referral from the police department and the fire department. Over the summer, once we go through this first phase of the pilot, they're gonna be able to be directly dispatched by 911 operators.
So they're going to call 911?
Yes.
So you're instructing people that need this kind of assistance to call?
No, we're not instructing anybody to call 911. That will be against the law. Well, what happens is with these type of programs, you have calls that come in already anyway through the system. So this team will be able to pick up those calls that come through the system. We're encouraging people that if they need crisis services, non-emergency services, to call 211 or 98 to access the crisis services from DEMAS.
Okay, so let me tell you the reason why I'm asking that question, because it may not sound budgetary, but it really is. I'm asking that because I'm wondering with the increase of calls that are somehow being directed, I'm just wondering if it's going to create a additional work for our PSAP center? Because are these calls that they would not normally be getting? The community healing support team or Clifford Beers, are they taking the calls themselves of these 550 people?
Yes, they triage, they have a warm line where people can call.
So that's not being funneled through our
No,
PSAP?
and this is not a rapid response team either. They respond within 48 to 78 hours.
Okay, so I guess what I'm wondering is, are these additional calls that are coming in, we already handle an incredible amount of calls to PSAP. I'm just wondering whether it is going to require at some point additional staff in PSAP.
Yeah, so these 346 responses are a mix of self-initiated responses where the team sees people who are in crisis in the streets and goes to help them. At the same time, we have right now only the referrals that the police department, the fire department gives us. So they will arrive to a location. They will determine whether it's safe, whether the person needs additional services like medical care or transport to the hospital. If they deem that person needs the crisis response team, they will call the team on site. So right now, I don't see it as an increased volume of calls. We are supporting the police department, fire department, by deploying additional resources to the field.
Because these are calls that will come through PSAP anyway?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Next on the queue is Alder Festa, followed by Alder Morrison. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Obviously, this data is fairly new. Can you, I mean, how new is it, and how, like how far back you just started? So is it 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah,
4 months?
so the data that I presented on the highlights are all for this fiscal year, starting July 1 through December. Some of them go to February, depending on how quick our contractors are in turning in their reports and invoices.
Okay. I mean, I think this data is fairly new, but actually a lot of this data we have been collecting for a long time through our homeless coordinator, et cetera. So I should have rephrased that. Do we monitor this data, and how do we monitor it?
Absolutely. Every quarter, we receive a per own report from our partners. It doesn't work like that usually in the ideal world, but we receive data as part of the contract. That data, we analyze it, either using Power BI or Excel, to make sure that we are allocating resources where they need to be. So I'll give an example. We know that at the Reentry Welcome Center, about 90% of the people who are dropped off from the Department of Correction are homeless. And we know there are not enough resources out there for the general public, much less for the formerly incarcerated. So we are now working with them to attract funding that can fill in the gap and provide the flexibility for the formerly incarcerated to have more access to housing and housing assistance.
Okay, and again, we've had that problem for a long time, and we are aware of it, and but thanks for the reminder. I know that, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, I believe you asked for this, the partners, or someone asked for partners?
Yes,
the number of partners?
That is a request that will follow.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so I'll wait for that, because that was something that I have written down. Also, with PSAP, I guess it was kind of answered, like, are they trained to know which calls need to have the various services?
So right now, PSAP is not triaging or dispatching the team. The police and the fire department are in charge of requesting the services.
And I guess the same question, are they trained, they're trained to know?
Correct.
Which ones are?
Correct. We have a set of criteria for both the fire department and the police department.
Okay. You know what, and I'm just going to go back real quick to the organizational chart, because I thought here it says that the data GIS manager is ARPA funds, but I thought we had somebody who was doing data stuff for the home. He left though. I forgot his name, this is pre-COVID.
So we have different data, we have different GIS analysts.
Okay.
We do have two that work in our city IT office, which is what you're referring to, but remember, our IT office is citywide. We're trying to get this off the ground, and the different data points and other things, when we proposed the department, we thought it was best to include that GIS analyst position, because we thought it would be, with everything going on, it would have been just a lot more additional work, data collecting, data mapping for the current GIS we had in IT.
Okay, because I remember a program being worked on, this again is pre-COVID, to track the homeless particularly and get data from, you know, where they're from and what assistance they may need to assist also the outreach workers that went out. And I'm assuming we're still using this.
That might even go to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can answer
Yeah.
that. Yeah, so I think the program you're referring to is an application that the previous GIS analyst built that could be used by various outreach partners, including city staff, LCI, whatnot, when they encountered an issue.
Yeah.
We had a challenge with actually implementing, and not because the program wasn't good, because our outside partners would not use it because they were afraid of sharing identifiable information with city staff. So unfortunately, that program was not able to move forward beyond the development stage.
Okay, that's too bad because it
It was
gave
too
a
bad,
lot
yeah.
of good information and identified
Yeah.
also many of the homeless that came from outside of New Haven and outside of Connecticut. And I only bring that up because yes, that does affect our budget and how we're going to place these, you know, the unhoused. Thank you. I was looking for, I didn't want to say homeless. I couldn't remember the proper term. So the unhoused, and it does affect also our New Haven residents. So,
Yeah, we still work to track,
okay.
you know, the number, you know, we work with United Way, who oversees the regional homeless system, and they provide tracking of the number of people who are on the wait list. So we kind of dynamically track the information that we do have, but that tool is very specific for New Haven, tracking where people were and following up. It had promise, unfortunately, wasn't able to be adopted because the key partners that would have input the data weren't willing, you know, we weren't able to cross that bridge with them.
Okay, interesting. All right, so I guess I was looking at this data and thought maybe some of it came from that type of analysis, but it came from other analysis, obviously, that's being used and tracked. Okay. And I assume you work closely with our, I mean, in the organizational chart anyway, it says that, you know, the homeless coordinator, sorry. Yes, our homeless coordinator who's on general funds as well as special projects. So I'm assuming you work closely with them, with housing, with, it's just, some of these numbers, I'm happy that if this is really accurate, it's just, I feel like we have a bigger problem than what is displayed here. And 95% secured permanent or temporary housing, that's, I mean, that's fantastic out of 123, but how many actually stay in the housing? Is anyone tracking that data? Like,
yeah, absolutely. We have, for reentry services, which is the number that you're reading there, the reentry welcome center is in charge of tracking those data and providing the data to the Department of Community Recipients and CSA.
okay, I mean, this is as of recently, these
Yes.
numbers.
This is for this fiscal year.
You know, and I guess, has it changed since you initially housed to what these numbers are? Kind of like the high school dropout rate, right? Or we look at kids who go to college and we want to know how many actually stay in college their first year. How many are staying housed where housing is provided?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's for all of the
data. I can provide that information for you.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Noted.
Thank you. I think that does it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Costa. Alder Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you so much. This, you know, it's right up my alley, all this social worky stuff and helping folks. So in regards to the Compass program in particular, I see that you guys are doing you're increasing your time scale from 8 a.m. to 12 midnight. What's the current time frame that Compass is going out?
So right now they're going out from 10 to 6.
Okay.
Just one shift, 7 days a week.
Okay. And so from that 10 to 6, what has been identified as the most crucial time frame from 10 to 6?
Yeah, you will not imagine this, but it's noon in the early afternoon, the biggest peak times that the team is seeing right now.
You said noon
in early afternoon.
Okay, all right. So is this 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. kind of like a pilot to kind of see if we're out there all day, all night, with the exception of like 6 hours, basically 8 hours? I guess I'm saying, is this like a pilot to kind of see where else Compass is really needed? Because I love the fact that you guys are gonna be an available service, basically almost 24 hours. But is this right now just a pilot for the 8 to 12? How long do you think you guys will do that? And then when will a decision be made around the concrete hours where this service will be made? Or are you just gonna have it open 24 hours and use it as needed for the year?
That's a great question. I appreciate that, Alder Morrison. We are expanding the pilot. We're entering a phase 2. Eventually, our objective is to either get to 24 hours or see in the call volumes if it makes sense to have an overlapping team, a third team that overlaps hours with another one to make sure that we're getting to all the calls that we can get in peak hours. So we want to see what the data tell us from July 1st of this year through June 30th of next year. And then it's a little bit before, of course, June 30th, make a decision whether we want to do 24-hour service or we want to do an overlapping time with the third team. So we still gotta figure out by looking at the data, looking at the demand for services as well.
So you'll do an assessment for the year around the time. Sure. And then just for clarity, just for clarity in regards to how the service is used. I know that you guys have the car and you use Continuum of Care as the partner, and they do right around and they find people. But as far as the calling, right? 211 info line is the place, like if I saw someone that needed some type of service, 211 is the number that I should tell people to contact for Compass services, or how is that information put out there?
Yeah, so there are a lot of regulations of the state that we have to respect. One of them is that we cannot tell people to call emergency services for issues that are not related to medical emergencies, criminal activity, or fire. Following that regulation, of course, we cannot tell people to call 211 if they have a mental health crisis that's not an emergency.
911.
211, yeah.
Because I'm saying 211.
Yeah.
Okay.
211, we encourage people to call if they have no emergency, and if they're experiencing a mental health crisis and do not want police involvement. They should call 211 or 988 to access the crisis lines and mobile crisis teams from the Connecticut Mental Health Center.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the great job that you're doing in putting all these resources together and helping this population that is so underserved. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Further questions from colleagues about the Department of Community Resilience? I almost said the Community of Department Resilience, but I think that's a very different organization. Seeing none, well, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to hearing more about your efforts later on when we hear an ARPA. Absolutely. And our staff will follow up with you on the follow-up items that come up.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gormany, Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You are allowed to depart the table.
Thank you.
So before a motion to adjourn is appropriate, let me just remind colleagues that our next meeting is tomorrow. And in that meeting, we'll have a business item. It's another contract for internet services for the Board of Education. So that will be where we begin tomorrow evening. And then we'll go right into our departmental workshops. Headliner is the Board of Education. You might have noticed that there is information that folks can look at, peruse, browse before the meeting tomorrow. We will also hear from the Chief Administrative Officers Group and the Enterprise Fund. So that is our list of guests tomorrow. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion of the motion to adjourn? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carries. We are adjourned.
FYI. So the feds will be expanding.